So Kanab is a great place to go. Okay? You're right by Grand Staircase Escalante.
Yes, that's, you have the coolest sand.
Hey, Brian.
Yeah, and then you have the Grand Canyon. So it's actually a good
All right, thank you, board, for being here this evening. Today is March 3rd, 2026. We're here for the purposes of a Salt Lake City School District Board of Education business meeting. But before we get started, the board does have a need to enter closed executive session, and I'll entertain a motion at this time.
I move that on March 3rd, 2026, the board enter closed session to discuss the character, professional competence, or physical or mental health of an individual and pending or reasonably imminent litigation.
I second.
Got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion to the motion? All right, seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote with Board Member Williams.
Bryce Williams, yes.
Ashley Anderson, yes.
Nate Salazar, yes?
Annie Romano, yes.
Brian Jensen, yes.
Amanda Lungwell, yes.
All right, that motion passes. We'll be back at 5:30. Thank you.
Okay, Sam, I've got a question for you. So I don't understand why my Outlook is frozen. And so then I try to open it just, in another browser or something. And I don't get all of this stuff. So I want to be on the one, because initially you set this up for me. Okay.
Back in the day.
Back in the day. So here's it won't let me.
Just check this and see what if I get this. Started.
$80,000 on the attendance system.
This is on the consent agenda.
Uh-huh. It's,
I'll look at it.
okay, anyway, look at it.
I know that
Okay.
we had our, that's the time and attendance system.
Right, the time and attendance thing.
And they were just like, because you're in the pilot program, we're just gonna say you passed. And I was just like, so I did like the first three parts of it. Did you do the video? Yeah, then we did the video. So I did find a CC coach. It was just right. But on my last response, it's my CC. I had to do a lot of videos, I had to do a lot of Zoom.
Okay.
Because she's like, sorry, that's when you can, I don't know people do it. Then it's against officers. Hey, said, she said, Kate's coming. I said, oh, no, she didn't. No, it wasn't. She needs new clothes. And we were laughing. Or she said, there's a couple of cool designs submitted.
All right, thank you everybody for joining us. We are just getting out of our closed session. Thank you for the extra time. Today is March 3rd, 2026. We're here for the purposes of a Salt Lake City School District Board of Education business meeting. I just want to make a couple of welcoming announcements, certainly to our association presidents. For the classified association groups, we have Buildings and Grounds, Sam Gilchrist. Child and Nutrition is represented by President Tanya Slaughter. For SLEA, we have President Mike Harmon with us. I don't see Chelsea yet, but I'm sure she'll roll in anytime, all the way from all of her cool adventures. For the Salt Lake Association of School Administrators, they're represented by Tom Luthi, and Dr. Adriana Pinto is with us this evening. How's it going? Thank you for joining us. And then other than that, we will move on to the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll go ahead and lead us in the pledge this evening. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, Board. Before I move on to the consent agenda, I just want to make one announcement. We do have a time certain public comment on the student fee schedule at 7:15, so regardless of where we're at in the agenda, we'll make the time to do that so that folks from the community can come in and weigh in on that fee schedule that's been published. And then also just a quick reminder that our next board meeting does not fall on a Tuesday, it falls on the Wednesday, so that everybody in this room and in the community can get out and participate in their local caucus night for their respective parties. Just a couple of quick announcements. I'll make those at the end as well for folks that may jump on later. We will now move into our consent agenda. Before I seek a motion, I do want to note that item number 7, Safe Schools Case number 26-071, has been requested by the board to move to the action agenda, and we'll take that up with individual discussion and a board vote when we get to the action agenda. Otherwise, I will entertain a motion regarding the consent agenda.
I move that we accept items 1 through 6 on the consent agenda and place item 7, Safe Schools Case number 26-071, on the action agenda.
I second.
Any discussion to the motion? All right. Oh, Brian. Sorry.
I do have one question, and this would come up under the U of U graduation ceremony. I have heard from at least one school that, and I mean, I'm certainly going to support this. I mean, this year, graduations are coming up, but they are wondering about having another venue rather than the University of Utah because of some of the prohibitions that the university is presenting with the graduations that occur there.
Yeah, call it what it is, confetti. We have looked at other venues, other options. Each one brings their own challenges. Sometimes it's price related as well. But each year we kind of analyze what's the best venue to use. So we just aren't by default using the same venue year after year. We analyze and look at what our options are, and it ends up that that's usually the best option at the end of the day.
Okay.
Thank you, Brian. Ashley?
I have 2 questions, and one is also about graduation. There was a rumor circulating among some parents that West High's graduation was on a different date than the other high schools, or something had happened, and there was misinformation. Can you clarify that whether or not I'm correct, the graduations are on a cycle, they rotate through the times of day that they are, but it's all coordinated through the district for all comprehensive high schools?
Yes, so the graduations that are held at the Huntsman Center will all be on the same time. They do rotate. They have a rotation worked out amongst them, but held on the same day as well. So any rumors to the contrary are not true.
Thank you. My second thing I just want to confirm is I know that on the consent agenda, we're agreeing that there needs to be some removal of trees related to the West High construction. And I anticipate, that people become frustrated when trees are removed. So I wanted to clarify that I'm understanding correctly. We conserved as many trees as possible. The trees that had to be removed were non-negotiable, but they will be replaced with a net increase of trees and attempts for mature trees when we're rebuilding that facility. Is that correct?
Right, that is correct. At the end of the day, the plan shows an increase of a few trees. Clearly, we can't plant absolutely mature trees, but it's the best to our ability.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Brian?
Okay, I'll just circle back quickly to this graduation because Board Member Anderson, anyway, it led me to another question that has come up, and that is, with the university, are they giving directives on the amount of time that, you know, each school, and I understand this is really challenging fitting in all of the schools, and now they're working, and I agree, we need to streamline graduations, but we also need to allow sufficient time to, I mean, this is a big deal. And I just want to make sure that they're able to have their celebrations. Are there time
Yeah,
constrictions?
within the contract, it's anticipated that each school gets, and I don't know the exact number of minutes, but so many minutes. Hasn't really been an issue in the past. And so we're running 4 high schools through the Huntsman Center in one day. And if you go much beyond that time, then, you know, someone's there at 10, 11 o'clock at night.
Oh, no, I understand that. I
Yes.
just didn't know if there were prohibitions that were coming from the university on time constraints. And
I mean, the
all of
contract
this.
has times in there, I mean, because
Okay.
they need to know when's our start time, when's our end time, when's cleanup time, and so forth.
Okay,
Part of the challenge was that some of the celebrations would happen within the building, which would preclude the next high school coming in.
okay.
So that's some of the, that's one of the things that we're working out with each high school in that, so.
All right.
That was maybe one of the constraints that you're thinking about.
Okay.
In the time and the congregating around the doors particularly created trouble with the flow of people in and out. So we're trying to work with the university around those items.
Great, I'm glad they're working with you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, we'll do a roll call vote, starting with Board Member Fife Jefferson.
Fife Jefferson, yes.
Ashley Anderson, yes.
Nate Salazar, yes.
Annie Romano, yes.
Brian Jensen, yes.
Amanda Longo, yes.
Bryce Williams, yes.
Excellent. That board passes, or that motion passes. Thank you, board. Moving on to our next agenda item, which is our request to speak portion. I will go ahead and read a statement here. The board enjoys the opportunity to hear from the public during the comment portion of its meetings. Before we begin, I would like to take a moment to remind you of our board rules governing your comments. The total time reserved for public comment is not to exceed 15 minutes, with all speakers or groups limited to 3 minutes. The board will not allow public comments during board meetings that are slanderous, obscene, or otherwise violate state or federal law. Employees and/or their representatives may not use the public comment period to address issues that should be raised through existing formal communication channels or established grievance or negotiation procedures. I'd also like to explain that unless the speaker's topic is already on the agenda, state law prohibits the board from taking action on items raised during the public comment period. However, if it seems appropriate to the circumstances, I may direct district staff to follow up with a speaker on the topic discussed. Our first speaker this evening is Charlie Beck. Charlie, are you with us? Come on up. And either of the podiums or the table, wherever you'd like to make your comments from. Thanks, Charlie.
Okay. I'm Charlie Beck. I am a senior at Innovations High School. And today I'm here to speak representing the students of the Animal Science CTE pathway. As you guys might know, the CTE pathway offers 2 classes, the small animal companion science class and the guide dogs training class, in which students have the opportunity to raise a guide dog for the blind. I personally have raised 2. This is my friends who I brought today just to show her. She's pretty cute. Recently, we received the email that the district has decided to shut down the program because it doesn't directly lead into a high-demand career. So I just want to voice sort of my club's remorse with this decision. Not only do I think that this decision implies that our classes and our experiences don't have value if they aren't job-related, but I also think that it ignores the soft skills that we gain from this program, including things such as communication, problem-solving, resilience, and much more. I think that these classes are unparalleled by any other class, regardless of industry-recognized credentials. I think that it is more than just that these classes have taught me a lot or that they have been fun or important to me, but that my high school career would have been completely different without them. I can't imagine what would have motivated me if I didn't have the teacher Anna Blackman every day to encourage me, and also the knowledge that I was volunteering and possibly changing somebody's life. I think that other classes that give you a certificate definitely make you look good on paper. They're good for a resume and to get a job, but these classes give you the skills to tackle the real world. And any other person who has raised a guide dog in these classes would tell you the exact same thing. And it is my group's regret that future students will be robbed of this community and the life lessons that they could have gained from being a part of this course. And yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Charlie, for joining us this evening. Our next speaker this evening is Rye Pickle.
Esteemed board, my name is Rye Pickle. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm a teacher at West High School. I'm speaking to you today in representation of some of my colleagues and students who are here with me today about some equity concerns in regards to our staffing process as a district and the need for district leadership in certain areas. At West High School, we were cut 10.5 teachers this year, with 8.5 FTE being cut and the rest coming from large budget cuts. We follow a similar formula to determine FTE cuts each year, with 92.5 FTE in the 2021-22 school year and a projected 77.5 FTE in the 26-27 school year. This is a 16% decrease in staff over just a few years. This year alone, we are cutting 10% of our entire faculty in one school year. What I am mostly concerned about is the lack of foresight and what this will do for programs at the high school level. As at the elementary level, cutting FTE means larger class sizes and possible shifting of who teaches what grade. At the high school level, cutting FTE means larger class sizes, shifting of who teaches what sections and subjects, and a possible loss of entire programs that have taken years to build at our school. What makes West High great is our unique and diverse student body, and a diverse student body requires a diverse course catalog. We are not talking about a few programs that do all right in class sizes or participation and accolades. We are talking about a well-established and well-known IB program, a nationally renowned robotics program, languages taken for decades, treasured by students, families, and their cultural communities, and many more. When we cut FTE at this large of a scale, without spreading it over time of planning and preparation, we cut programs that make us West High School. When we as a district closed elementary schools, we were slow. We took feedback from families and staff affected, ran budgets and enrollment numbers over and over, and were as transparent as possible with the entire process. We did not do this slowly at the high school level. It was done without seeing past the next year, and we are not going to be able to build these programs again in future years as quickly as we will need them. Additionally, we do not understand how a West Side school with some of the most vulnerable students in our district is being cut more than 200% more than the other two comprehensive high schools combined. That is greatly alarming and deeply inequitable. We have services we must offer at our school for our students to succeed, and those services are going to be directly impacted by these cuts. I am asking for a process that sees each school as a holistic individual rather than a cog in a district machine. We cannot be measured against the other two comprehensive high schools when we offer two grades they do not, when our student populations are not the same, when our students do not live in the same places, and we do not have the same needs. We also should not be following the same processes as the elementary schools or even middle schools. All of us need different things when it comes to staffing. Using the same process to determine FTE at each level is definitely equal, but it is not equitable. Please consider processes for staffing going forward, and please investigate the reasons why West High is being cut at a much higher percentage than the other high schools this year. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent. Thank you, Rye, for sharing your thoughts and your feedback to us, and for all of your students that are here with you today as well. Thank you for being here this evening, and a lot of teachers as well, so thank you. We will now move on to our next portion of the agenda, which is our reports agenda. The first item we have there is a construction update. B.A. Kearsley, I don't know if there's anything that you wanted to introduce before Isaac gets up here. So.
Nope.
Thank you. Isaac, the podium or the table is yours.
Sorry about that. Good evening, board members. Just want to, the report provided to you guys, I want to highlight a few items in there, and if you have any questions or concerns, be happy to answer those at this time. West High School, the initial bids came in 2 weeks ago. The evaluation so far, we won't have that finally scrubbed until middle of March, but so far the major components of the project were a little bit under budget of what we've projected. So some good news finally. Along with that, we will be doing a groundbreaking for West High on March 19th at 1:15 p.m. We invite all of you, your families, students to come and participate in that. Along with that, Highland High School, we're just a few weeks behind the process there as we are compared to West. We will be presenting some times and getting your input to set a date for the groundbreaking for Highland High School. The bids actually went out last Wednesday, and we will receive those back at the end of the month, and then we'll do the scrubbing, which takes about 4 weeks to do. And hopefully we'll have some more good news for you on there. Just a couple of items in there that we've seen on the bids is we've had several of our several sections of the contractors we're seeing very low bidding in it, and it just shows the lack of workforce available to do some of the different skill sets that are required to do these projects. But the good news is the budget's still coming in where we need it to. Glendale Track and Field, well, first of all, before I talk about Glendale and Rosewood, I want to say practices have been going for nearly 2 weeks now. Students are getting the buses, the rides are working, our transportation's working. We have temporary bathrooms and an area to get out of the rain and weather at Glendale. Rosewood is same thing, but a little different. The only thing that is outstanding at Glendale is we're waiting for the temperatures to get hot enough that we can finish the last coat on the track. And then obviously the building, they're just about done with all of the masonry work on that and will be completed soon. Rosewood Park, we have to wait for weather to warm up and for the sod farms to open so we can actually do the sod work on the exterior of the field. But everything in the field is complete other than some leveling that needs to be done with a roller, and it's too wet to do that right now. So we're working with the teams to work through that. But we're grateful for everybody's understanding and efforts in that, especially the coaches and students that are participating at those locations. Roslyn Heights, we did some updates there, and I've provided some feedback to the board about the lighting and some changes that happened there to address concerns that came from the community. The use of that facility by the students is immense. They're there every day from the end of school until the lights turn off. No later than 9 p.m., but generally the coach texts and says, hey, I'm getting in my car and I'm turning the lights off remotely as quickly as possible, so they're not just staying on until 9 p.m. or 8 p.m., whatever the schedule says. Across the district, we have quite a few other projects that are happening, but I just want to say I'm grateful for the team that I have and the efforts that they're putting in to make sure that all of these we're staying on top of all of them and that things are happening in a timely manner. Any questions or concerns?
Have Ashley and then Amanda.
I have a couple of questions. I've heard a little bit of feedback about the outfield at Rosewood, that specifically there are some injury risks with some divots that are out there. Can you clarify the plan for improving the outfield as we navigate those renovations?
Yeah, the first step in that is we go out and set a layer of material over the big, deep areas, and then we bring a roller through, but you have to pull that roller with a machine, with a UTV, and it's too wet for both the machine and the roller right now. So as soon as we can get a day that's meets our criteria, we'll get out there and do that. In the meantime, we have been working with Ronnie, who's the head custodian at West, but also an avid baseball player, and he's out there every day working on things to make sure we're meeting the coaches' needs. The other thing with there is we've found that right field's a little short compared to what they had, so we're gonna be putting up some netting to protect the cars in the parking lot.
Thank you in advance. I think that's great. This also commences my formal petition that UHSAA let everyone play fall ball when the weather is better, regardless of your division. I do have a question. Some of us received an email about summer ball at Highland, and I just want to confirm, if people have a question about field use, field availability in the summer, not in the summer, when it is it best they contact auxiliary services, or they work with their athletic director to determine the exact dates of the program when they want to make sure the field's available?
So it's best to work, if it's an athletics sport team, that they should work with the athletic director. If it's anyone else, they should be working with auxiliary services. The reservations themselves are held in our department, and we manage all of those in coordination with the athletic directors. We're trying to take some of that off of their plate. But to confirm that we are not removing anything from Highland until the new fields are done. And those will be done over this summer and be prepared for next spring. So those fields will be available through this year.
That's great. I have one more question, and I think it might be best directed to our business administrator, but you can answer. Some of the parents at West High are interested in fundraising to procure a scoreboard, recognizing that we did not approve sufficient funding for scoreboards, but it's something they still want. Would there be anything that prohibits parents from working with their athletic director to write like fundraising letters in support of something like that they want for temporary fields?
No, there wouldn't be anything that would preclude that.
So in order to do that, would they work through the business office or auxiliary services?
Yeah, they could work through business office, and I may defer them also to the foundation to help with those efforts.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks, Ashley. Amanda?
Going off of what Ashley just asked about, you had mentioned reach out to auxiliary services for clarity. Who an auxiliary service is for the public's sake?
It's our main number, but we have several administrative assistants up there. Ty's our main contact.
Okay.
But
The
they
main
call
phone number
auxiliary
that they can
services.
find on the website.
Yep.
Thank you. Pointing out, you covered it in your presentation, but super exciting, West High School has their groundbreaking on March 19th. Highland High School, we're getting close, potential groundbreaking in April, which is super exciting. I know the students in the community are getting excited and nervous, but excited. And then Roslyn Heights, we are aware that there continues to be concerns coming out of that location. I won't get into it in this conversation, but my ask is that we hear what is being expressed and do our best to work on compromise solutions to mitigate some of the issues that are ongoing. So I just wanted to put that out there. But aside from that, I know it's a huge endeavor that you're tackling. I don't envy you. Thank you for all of your work.
Thanks.
Thanks, Amanda. Any other questions for Isaac or for B.A. Kearsley? All right. Oh, Brian, go ahead.
This is a construction update, and I'm not sure whether this is the report that I should be asking this under, but when we had the construction bond, there was the West High rebuild, there was the Highland rebuild, but then there was also the East High Field House. And I am being asked questions about where we are on the East High Field House. Is that out there?
Yes, so obviously these are all large projects.
Right.
The goal was to identify the ones that are the longest, get the biggest projects going. Once those are done, or once they're moving forward, then we will reach out to the high school and the community. We'll talk about the needs, what would be needed in theirs, just like we did with the new high school builds.
Okay.
But that project really is less than a 24-month project. It's a lot of money, and it is a big project, and it's important. But the goal was to get these others moving so that we're completing all three of them within a couple of years of each other, so it's all seamless and everybody has the same facilities at the same time.
I think it's nice to have that explanation, and I think it's helpful for them to understand that it is on the radar and
Yes.
that it has not fallen off the to-do list.
It absolutely hasn't. It's about a 10-pound weight sitting about right here.
Thanks, Brian. Seeing no other questions, Isaac, thank you for
Thank you.
joining us and for all of
Appreciate
your
it.
work. Appreciate it.
Isaac, you might want to stay up for the next report, though.
The second report agenda item is budget development capital projects.
Right, so as noted on the attachment to the agenda, each year Isaac and his team go through each of our schools and they create a needs assessment along with the representatives from the school. And then we plan that out, and then we have to determine what of the projects we're going to prioritize with the limited resources that we have. And what you see attached to the agenda is those projects which have been identified for the 26-27 fiscal year. As noted in the memo, there's a couple pieces that are built in there. We do have the sustainability projects that are built in there, which are paid with bond funds, and then the balance is coming out of the regular capital levy of the district. And as noted in the memo, when we had our 50-year plan presentation, I believe back in January, we showed a need of some $40 million worth of projects. However, we don't have $40 million available, so Isaac and his team went through and prioritized those items which could be done within the resources we have. And that's the list that you have there attached to the agenda. It's a list by school of what the projects will be for the next fiscal year. And with that, I'm open to any questions that Isaac can answer.
Ashley, Amanda, and then Annie.
So I noticed that LED stage lights for elementary schools are really common in the list, but they don't have that sustainability marker. Is there a reason why so many elementary schools are having that specific upgrade?
So the specific reason is, there is a sustainability effort in there, and our sustainability and energy sustainability manager tracks those reports through KW to Rocky Mountain Power, and then we get rebates for those projects. But the majority of those is just based on age of trying to update from a fluorescent or another type of bulb that uses a lot of energy and burns out on a regular basis to LEDs.
That makes sense. And I don't know, again, if this question is best directed to you or the superintendent, but recognizing that future elementary school closures were punted to the next academic year for consideration, I noticed that there tends to be a lot of speculation when these reports are shared about what they mean, like who's getting what upgrade and who's not getting an upgrade, or alternatively, speculation about why we would do an upgrade when elementary school facilities may be likely to close and we've just spent, whatever it costs, $150,000 on LED lights. Is there any kind of logic to how we're doing this other than age, or things we could clarify for the public about the relationship of capital improvements to future school closures?
Do you want me to
Or
answer that?
closure recommendations?
Yes. First of all, the conversation we had in January, I told you I'm working on that. I told you it'd take me 60 to 90 days to have that done. We're about 2/3 of the way there. So hopefully, we're a little behind this recommendation, but it is based off of that information of what the scoring value of the school was versus the overall needs. We try to focus on the major components first, and then if there's money left over for other things, that's when we try to do the things that the principal or teachers are asking for. But it's all based off of that scoring need. So if you recall, one building showed a score of 88 and another one was a score of 13. Obviously, that score of 88 is going to get a preference out of the decision of, okay, they both need boilers, which one needs it the most? Obviously, the one that scored higher. But we used we use the information without providing you the one sheets that I'm working on to provide to you guys.
That makes sense. My last question starts with appreciation. I see there are Wasatch roof repairs on this, and I know that's something the community's been asking for a long time. I know that actually a lot of their current leaks and flooded classrooms have been from water fountains, which I don't see on here. When other emergent things come up, or do those don't appear on this walkthrough budget?
So
but
if
they
you-
are being addressed.
They are being addressed. If you look at the bottom of the list, there are a breakdown of certain components, whether it be security, audio, visual, flooring, camera, mechanical, which is part of your plumbing and electrical. There are funds in there for us to do maintenance projects, and a big portion of that is there. But we've had 2 floods in 2 years now because of the little sticky valve inside the drinking fountain popped and then leaked all weekend. After the second one, our plumbers went through and replaced every one of them in the building. Just preventative, it's done. So we shouldn't have to worry about that. I would like to say, though, that the leak issues at Wasatch, though there are some roofing concerns, the majority of those leaks come from the type of drainage system on the roof. It's all internal rather than external, like you're used to on your house with a rain gutter. It actually comes inside the building and then drains around and down. So that's part of what we're working on to ensure that we can line that. But again, it's part of a roofing project, but it's not necessarily roofing that's causing the leaking. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. That's really helpful. Thank you so much.
We have Amanda and then Annie. Thanks, Ashley.
Mine are, you obviously commented on the rating piece. I am, I guess I'm struggling to understand the 23K on the LED lights for the stage lights. So could you help me / the public understand why each location, it's 23K per location on replacing LED lights?
For the most part, we try to standardize components inside the buildings, even though they're built a little differently. And that is a rough estimate on each one. And like this last year, I believe we did 6 of them this last year. One of them ended up being like 28,000 and 2 more were 18,000. So it was, in the end it washed out, but we're just trying to take an average budget to show what it'll take to do each one of those.
And what are the largest contributors to it being such a price tag?
It's the technology and the use of them. I mean, there are, lighting, well, in the discussion of building high schools, the most expensive space in the building is your performing arts area. And it's just part of the components that come with that.
Thank you. Additionally, at Highland Park, it talked about removing the grass on the south side where it's got a little bit of a, can't remember the language you used, and then replacing it with concrete. I understand the why behind it, given I've been there for a very long time. The other piece that I did not see was shade. So it's taking out albeit a dysfunctional grassy area, changing it to concrete, which increases the heat. It does not talk about a shade element, which is direly needed on that south end of that school building. So I guess my broad question is, as we're looking at these projects and such, I obviously have pushed to become more water wise, but in that process, I can include improving tree canopy to provide shade that is helpful for various reasons to include, especially children's comfort. So I guess you don't even have to answer it because I know it's quite lengthy, but it would just be another piece that I would say that we need to be looking at is if we're adding more hardscaping or increasing the heat for our students when sometimes we have some very hot times, especially for students that have summer programs, which Highland Park traditionally has summer programs, that we do need shade for comfort purposes. Could you explain to me why we need to restripe Hawthorne that is currently a closed building that is coming with a $35,000 price tag?
Sorry, let me go back to scroll down, make sure I'm looking at the right one. So that, it's the major cost there is the seal coat. So the asphalt, we're on all of our asphalt projects, we try to recoat them every 5th year. that extends a product from 10 years to 25 years if you consistently do that.
Is it something that could potentially be held on, given we're going through a process and determining whether or not we're going to retain or sell properties right now, instead of adding this to our capital bonds projects? We have not completed the process to determine where we stand on selling properties. Is this a prudent time to be investing $35,000 into this that we could hold off on until we complete that analysis that's currently going on?
Well, I'm sure we could do that, and if that's what you guys decide or advise us budget-wise, I'm fine with doing that. I will just say, these recommendations are based on properties that we own now and we are responsible for, and I'm trying to be responsible in ensuring that we have a safe operational facility until the day that it's decided that it either is sold, goes to someone else, or something else.
Right.
And that lot is in bad shape.
And I don't doubt there's a necessity for it. I presume we'll be able to know by the end of this calendar year whether or not we're going to retain that property or not. And so we can have it on the tentative capital projects plan, but until we actually complete our analysis and determine what we're doing with our properties we're not currently using, it does not seem responsible to be doing all of these things until we know what that next step is gonna be. So that would just be my ask, is having a little asterisk of wait until we complete our G5 process for our closed buildings.
I think on some of these things, like asphalt may be one that it's worth pausing on. Some of the other ones where we're trying to have an upkeep are a little different, so maybe we take that project by project.
Yeah,
that way
agreed.
to think about.
Ann?
Yeah, that was one thing that stood out to me was the Hawthorne and also the Riley. The Riley's only $4,000, but it says restripe all asphalt. And just wondering if that's really necessary at this time because of the vacancies. So I would kind of agree with Amanda that those could be put on, you know, a possibility to shelf for a little while.
Absolutely.
And then I'm wondering, so potentially you explained a little bit about the grading system that we had talked about in the facilities report that you're developing. And it sounds like there's a way to, you know, assign a score to a school or a specific part of that school that needs a amount of attention. I'm wondering, sometimes projects end up being more expensive, and these are current estimates, right? They're not contracted out.
Yes.
So because they're not contracted out, like, do you have on this list, if, for example, it ends up being more expensive or there are budget shortfalls given whatever reason, do you have like the ones that you would take off this list?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
we have a we plan a contingency in all of this and make sure that as we evaluate what projects come in, if some come in high, we decide which one higher priority and remove whatever we need to ensure we stay within the budget that you've provided. We never do anything that isn't on the list. That would wait until next year when we provide you a new list, unless there's something that we bring to you and ask for consideration.
Okay, great. Also, I would just like to thank you for this whole process is very time intensive. And I was actually happened to be at the Emerson Elementary School facilities meeting, and I'm happy to see that they have the storm tech system on there because I know that parking lot flooding has been a big issue. My last question just kind of is, I do notice that West and Highland both have things on this list, and I'm wondering, are these like really necessary just for the next couple of years for them to be able to run, or why would they still have, especially West has like a 1.2 million basically issue. I'm just wondering why that wouldn't really be that necessary at this point when we're rebuilding.
I'm happy to go through line by line if you'd like. West High School, the bathrooms, we've had major issues with vandalism where we have to replace partitions and doors on a regular basis, but there's quite a few that are missing right now. And so it's obviously it's $150,000 worth of work to get that up to date. And that's more of a safety and sanitary reason. The $800,000 for the football field, that one's unfortunate, but the fields are generally need to be replaced about every 10 years. We actually extended west by 2 years. We did east 2 years ago, we did Highland last year. West is the last one and it doesn't meet the fall rating now for safety for the students. So that estimate is just to pull up what's there and place a new field and with the foundation and the cushioning. The staging curtain rigging is failing, and it's another safety issue that we've identified working with them. The roof is in really bad shape. This is just an estimate of how can we go through and spot and fix things as we go, trying to not have to spend $1 million on a roof of a building that's not going to be there forever. The construction commissioning, that's part of the part of the sustainability, but it ensures, the best example I can give is this building. We built this building, we asked them to build it to a certain spec. We took that at that level of, okay, it will be done and it's correct. We're having quite a few issues with the HVAC system of this building now. So with these new builds, we've hired KW Engineering to be our double check on things. So as it's designed, the other engineers are working with KW to ensure that the design and scope work. And then as the installers install all of that equipment, KW will come through and inspect, and then at the end, they'll actually run systems for several months to make sure everything works appropriately. And that's what that $150,000, it's actually for the new building, but it's out of the bond money for the sustainability.
Okay.
And we're doing that for both there and Highland.
Okay, thank you. I think that answers my question. Just the last note I would have is, once we spend $800,000 on that artificial turf for the football field, will we be able to use any of that, or is that going to just go down the drain once we build new facilities?
We'll end up being able to use it in other areas. For example, the last time we did this, they took a bunch of it and put it in one of the weight rooms. We put it in a dance room, a lot of different uses we can use, but unfortunately it can't be pulled up and then put down on the new field that's going to be built in 4 years.
Okay,
So
thank you.
we'll get about 40% of the life out of it.
Thank you, Annie. Are there any other questions in the first round? And Ashley, I did see you. We'll move to the second round, but first, Brian had his hand raised.
You asked the one, or you answered the one about turf. That was on my list, but as I was looking through, I've had elementary schools that have had questions about fencing because of safety and things like that. How does that factor in? Are you thinking about that with some of these schools? And I realize that most schools, are not completely fenced, but are we looking at it and ensuring that there is fencing where it's really important for safety?
The short answer is yes. When the new security measures came out, we evaluated, we provided a budget. It's just over $100 million to meet all of the requirements.
Yeah, I
for that.
remember that.
I was actually at a security meeting on Friday last week talking about what the true requirements are now. And basically, every school has to have some sort of security system on the front of the building with glazing or bulletproof glass. Mm-hmm. And everything from the sides and back, anywhere that students organize outside, we have to have fencing around. So that is in that estimate of the $100 million of basically building a fence off both sides of every school and going the rest of the property, except for the main entrance area and parking lot. Those are not built into this right now. They are on a different estimate. But again, we'll prioritize which those are and make sure that we meet the requirements the state set of 15 years now.
Yeah, we have a separate timeline to
Yep.
meet that, right?
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts or questions in the first round? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to the second round with Ashley.
I wanted to respond a little bit about the concerns regarding West. I think maybe we don't recognize that a full cohort and a half of kids are gonna go through West before it's rebuilt. And so it's really important that a cohort and a half of young adults have a functioning building during the time they are there. For comparison, I have a 6th grader right now who will start going to West next year, and they may see that building their senior year, maybe, right? If things all go to plan. That's a lot of time for a person to be in a building, and we should expect, I think, regular repairs to that facility. I want to express my confidence that I think Auxiliary Services considers what is absolutely essential given the budget constraints that office faces every year in making these difficult decisions about what to cover and what not. With that in mind, I hear peers asking that the board consider limiting the actions taken in upcoming budget. Because this is a report and we can't act on reports, and we typically avoid giving direction on reports because it's unclear to the public what we can and cannot act on in the public meeting, I would ask that if board members prefer that, you know, the full board review a limited number of projects, that a list of proposed projects to review would be provided to board leadership. I'd be willing to second that request. I think especially for, you know, properties that are not operating as elementary schools, it's important to consider if something is a safety concern for members of the public who use that building, or temporary uses, or if it could be delayed. But if it was, a request was made with a list of projects and it was appropriately seconded, it would allow us to place it on a discussion agenda so we could have real clear communication and also get feedback from the public. And I'm wondering if you, Alan, as the business administrator, think that that would be reasonable. Is this something that automatically goes into the budget cycle? How do you think is the most appropriate way for us to address the concerns people are raising?
Now, you're talking the concerns that have been brought up by board members in this discussion, correct?
Right.
Yeah, so again, this is a report, part of, you know, it's one puzzle piece of the big budget. I think we could meet, you know, if I'm just trying to wrap my head around what you're saying, and I'm not sure I'm getting there.
I think what I'm saying is it most useful if we prioritize placing this on a discussion agenda where we could talk about it? Or is it most prudent to place it on a discussion agenda or direct the finance committee to discuss it as part of the budget cycle, recognizing that there's been some disagreement? What's the best way to address the concerns without offering direction on a report, which we really typically don't do?
Right, and clearly any discussion about it, we would like Isaac or members of his team there, because they have the background of why this particular item was selected. Whether that's finance committee or as a board discussion, because the capital budget is still yet to come in a future board meeting. We could address it then, or could address it with board finance committee meetings separately. Either one of those would work.
Thank you, Ashley. Board members, if you have that request in a second, please let Brian and me know, and we'll work to get it scheduled.
Yeah.
Second round. Annie?
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think it would make sense to address when we go over the capital budget.
Yeah, and just remember, so these are the projects that will be done in theory from July 2026 through June 2027. So some of them, we can say, well, let's push those back to the end of that time frame, and we can still have those discussions. Because we don't get all these projects done in the first 3 months of the fiscal year. So I think, like Isaac said, we can.
Really?
We're good, but we're not that good. So we can look at those and say, instead of removing them from the list, maybe we prioritize them for the end of the fiscal year, and we can continue to have discussions throughout the year, and we'll have a better idea of maybe some of these other properties, what our long-term plan is with those.
Any other questions for Isaac? Isaac, thank you.
Thank you.
So much.
Appreciate it. Our next agenda item this evening for the report section is a Student Advisory Council proposal. Dr. Ruiz and our own student board member Foss, I believe, are presenting to us this evening. So we're looking forward to that. Thank you.
Okay, good evening.
Good evening.
I want to share how grateful I am for this opportunity. Foss and I attended a student board member session from the USBA conference, and we learned a lot about this model. And although this is not exactly the way they're implementing it, we tailor it to our district. And so each of you have access to the proposal, and I just want to summarize 5 tenets of this proposal. One, it will involve the 2 non-voting student board members that will be chosen for next year. Number 2, they will meet on a monthly basis and will create a student advisory council that they will lead, and all of the agenda items will be led by students, and then I will be supporting with all of the logistics. They'll have direct interaction with board leadership, a board member that may want to mentor and support our student board members that are leading this work. And then finally, this will give us a way to collect feedback in any of the initiatives that they either surface or that we find that we need to learn more from them. So I'm going to have Foss to add more details to that.
Yeah, so the way that we'll be selecting the members of this council will be very fair, very
Hey,
equitable.
Foss, could you lean a little closer to the microphone?
Yeah,
Sorry.
can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. The way that we're going to be addressing the selection process of the students who are involved in this council will be for each comprehensive high school, for East, Highland, and West, we'll be selecting 3 students, but for Horizonte and SLCSE, we'll be selecting only 2 students. All those students will be committing to 1 to 2 hours per month, but they will be committing to bringing invaluable information. And as a student board member right now, I know, for example, we had these students here today. They're from my school. I wasn't entirely aware that they were going to be presenting, so there's always things that can very well be brought to the board through student involvement, and that'll be very valuable even with only that 1 to 2 hours. All these students that are being selected will, of course, will make sure that they have a strong attendance record, no major disciplinary issues, a cumulative GPA of 2.7 or higher, and continued progress towards graduation with no failing grades or incompletes during their term of service. Then for the school-based selection process, it'll be led by the principals, and making sure that they'll meet those eligibility requirements. And also, when they're selecting those students, they're going to make sure that they are representing a wide swath of the students that we have in every high school. Again, in some of the commentaries that were being made, each of our high schools are different. But among all those different high schools, we're going to be making sure to find students that are not usually making commentaries. Even right now, if I were to go out and go very diligently through every classroom, there might be students that I don't talk to. And so part of the goal of this committee is going to be having representation from every student group, whether that be students who are involved in athletics or students that are involved in nothing at all. Other high schools have ensured that or other districts have ensured that SBOs and student government are doing their own program, and they're trying to find students in other areas to represent their councils. Currently, we're taking the approach that those students would still be welcome to participate in the interest of maintaining representation from all student groups. For roles, responsibilities, and meeting structure, they will be adhering to any established meeting norms. It would be representing to the extent possible their student perspectives and referring any requests for action through the appropriate administrative channels. When a follow-up is required, like we said, there would be a representative from the Board of Education at every meeting, ideally, and that would help to facilitate the transmission of any information or requests from the committee. Do you want to go over agenda ownership and meeting flow?
So all of the agenda items will be brought up by the students. Sometimes counselors will say, hey, that's a great idea. You should bring that to the Student Advisory Council and have that conversation. So it's very organic, hoping that those agenda items are are some of those issues that sometimes don't even get the attention that they need sometimes, and so that interaction between the students, board members, and district leadership will facilitate and that conversation, but also to the point that it will influence some of the decision-making practices and policies when applicable. This proposal does come with a small budget. We do hope that, and it's about $4,000, so we're looking about $2,400 for lunches. So when we all come together once a month at the hosting school, we'll provide transportation that will cost us about $1,600 for the year as a field trip for each of those months, for each month. And the $2,400 are for lunches, so that we could discuss agenda items and learn from each other over lunch time. We've also secured 2 small scholarships for the eligible student board members that meet all of their requirements for civic engagement, and those will be $500 each.
Just to highlight some things that a similar council has achieved in other school districts. We heard about students commenting on the cell phone policies as they were introduced, students bringing up concerns about dance safety and immediately dealing with issues for upcoming dances within one cycle. They clarified CTE credits. I know that we're working on increasing CTE involvement in our schools, so I see definitely a possibility of students bringing up clarifications as we begin to do that. And then also, school talked about their valedictorian formula. So there's a wide range of things that can be brought up, and I think this would be invaluable.
Great. Thank you, Foss. Thank you, Dr. Ruiz. We'll start with Board Member Williams.
Yeah, I actually don't have questions. I just have some comments. So I've been on the board for almost 5 years, and every USBA or NSBA conference that I go to these sessions about the student board members, and I've been saying that this is something that we should look at and consider to do, and I felt like it has fallen on deaf ears so the last USBA conference I actually did not go to the presentation. I'm assuming you were all going to, so I just wanted to say thank you for taking that up and exploring it and bringing it to the board.
Thank you, Bryce. Ashley?
I'm really glad the Student Advisory Council is returning, and I emphasize returning because we have had this under past superintendents before, and I think that's important to remember. And one thing I'm not positive about is if it used to include transportation costs. And so I know we've heard a lot of concerns in the public comment on discussion items that we have issues sufficiently transporting students to all of our school sites. We've had to remove courtesy stops. We hear reports that field trips are canceled because there aren't available buses or available drivers if there is a bus. And so I'm a little concerned about prioritizing the transportation component of this as compared to other transportation services in what's kind of a strained, system. And so I would just ask, I think I'm very supportive of this, but before it comes to a discussion, I would really appreciate if we could look at whether the past iteration of a student council did use transportation or if it used other models to push into schools so that we were, limiting the amount that students were going back and forth. I know we have our UTA passes. Could we encourage the use of those for this purpose? And just really consider the feasibility of the transportation ask and maybe some alternatives that the board could consider so that we can make sure the advisory council is successful without adding to some of the transportation burdens that we hear about, especially during the high school rebuilds where we have so many additional routes running for students. But I think that this is a great way to get more feedback from a greater number of students, and I appreciate the effort to resume a student advisory council for sure.
If I could add one piece.
Yeah.
And we will definitely explore all of those options. I did have a conversation with transportation, and we strategically placed the time and day and month that is outside of those blackout dates and times. And so from their perspective, this time and day for the month is going to work for them, but we will definitely bring other options to the table.
That's great clarification too, to know that we
Yes.
see that this is something that wouldn't conflict with what we hear about.
Right.
So I really appreciate that. I think transportations help us to make the best decision, knowing that that's a strained system, but that's really helpful clarification too. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ashley. Andy?
Yeah, thank you so much for doing this. I was in the same session as you at the USBA and did notice that it seemed really beneficial for other schools, districts to have this advisory council that brings in multiple voices from different communities. Just a quick question on the selection process. It sounds like it would be selected at a school level, and maybe you're still fleshing out exactly how that application process would work. Is that right?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, once we know the direction, whether it's approved or not, then we'll finalize some of the details and.
Okay, thanks.
I'll go ahead and take my turn unless Charlotte, you have anything, go ahead.
Well, I just want to say that I'm really glad that thank you for your input on this, Board Member Foss. And I do think that we should find a way to do this. Yeah, anyway. Don't think I have any other questions as of yet.
Okay, thank you, Charlotte. I just wanted to add similar, like really excited. I've been to a number of these sessions over the years myself. So I'm really excited, and thank you, Board Member Foss and Dr. Ruiz, for bringing it to the table. Just like thinking about things that I've heard at NSBA and USBA, similar to Bryce, I'm really excited about this calendar of month to month, about like meeting hosts and all the pickup and drop off. But I also know that in a couple of different, I think it was Provo one year and another school I heard about at the NSBA conference in another state. I can't remember which one, I'm super sorry. But nonetheless, a lot of the meetings that the advisory council was having was directly correlated with upcoming board agendas, so that the student advisory council could weigh in with the two sitting board members at the table to bring in feedback from a broader student community, right? To help either influence different perspectives or help the board answer questions that they might have about, well, what are students thinking about this particular topic or issue? Have you put any thought or developed any kind of a coordinating document about how that might be considered for what the board hears next?
I think that's a great idea. Not yet, but
Okay.
I will bring that back when we have the discussion.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Moving into, well, round two, but Amanda first.
Kind of off of what Nate was talking about, but more on the initial representation, as we are also working on ensuring that we're getting a broader voice. But I guess my ask would be ensuring we are having more students than just the typical students that are able to access these type of opportunities. So you've got, your students experiencing homeless, your youth in poverty, students in the essential elements classrooms, academic support, students with more complex disabilities that could be supported in these activities with a peer buddy or something, so that we are truly getting a broad voice in this opportunity, which the concept as a whole I've also supported, and I'm extremely excited, and it was really fun reading through how detailed the breakdown of this approach is as you're trying to work through it. And I'm sure it'll be like any program, it's an evolving thing. We learn what we need to improve upon. So that was just one of my larger asks. And then another suggestion, I've served on advisory panels outside of the district and prior work I've done in my advocacy, and one of the pieces that I found most effective on some of those panels was, as you're working on these projects and these initiatives and these kids are coming together, implementing a process of developing a recommendation memo that comes to the board so that it's not lost in a conversation dialogue. It actually is broken down into, you're developing your priorities, potentially for that year, and then at each of those meetings, what was your focus, and then what was the consensus, and then the summary memo that might be fine-tuned before it's brought to the board in that presentation. But that really, in my past experience, really brought effectiveness to the work versus just feeling like you're just saying a lot. So I think that would be helpful in having some good outcomes in that conversation and that partnership with students.
Yeah, I think the duo of student board members would be coming with a presentation that goes over the findings for each month. And also, I think it's a good idea, we should directly express that we're very open to providing accommodation for any students that need it. Of course, offering transportation for all students would help to bridge that gap somewhat as well.
And for some of those kids that may need support and even knowing that they can access it, ensuring that this communications come home to the parents and explaining to the parents how they can help support their kiddos in accessing this opportunity. It becomes a community effort to ensure that these voices are encompassed in this initiative.
Yeah, I know previously when we were talking about the addition or changes to the way that we select student school board members, we talked about ensuring that all schools are spreading information about how to apply, that everyone can apply. But yeah, we could also try and bake in some direction on making sure that's true for this council as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. We have Brian in the first round, and then I have Annie and Bryce for the second round. Let me get there. Brian.
I too was really excited to see this, and to me it kind of ties into what I am looking forward to in April, and that is my community engagement study session, because I think that when we're talking about a student advisory council, there would be a wonderful interplay between what the students were experiencing and feedback that could come from whatever we decide to do with like a community engagement piece going back and forth. I think that they would really be supportive of one another. Thank you, and this is great. Voss?
Thank you, Brian. Annie, and then Bryce on the second round.
Yes, just one thing I forgot to say is in the application process, I do think it would be great to have students of all ages, especially since the board members tend to be 12th grade students. I think one thing would be even advertising or recruiting incoming 9th graders from middle school to be engaged as well, so that we have a variety of ages and experience, and it could possibly be a feeder into their involvement as a student board member in the future. So
This model only includes juniors and seniors, and juniors in that they have a year to prepare to apply to be student board members in their senior year, so it's kind of a preparation for that role if they choose to apply to, but that's not something that we had considered, so we'll look into that.
Bryce?
Yeah, my comment was just super quick, and President Salazar, this is something that you said. The state that you were thinking about was a school in Oregon,
Yes.
and I was just going to offer to the two of you, I think I have notes on that, so I'll try to find those and share them with you.
Okay.
Thanks, Bryce. Any other questions for Dr. Ruiz or Foss? All right, seeing none. Dr. Ruiz, Dr. Grant, I think you got some good feedback from the board.
Yes.
And we'll look forward to seeing this on an upcoming agenda soon.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, our next report agenda item number 4 is the strategic plan pillar 1 mid-year update. Dr. Grant, I believe Dr. Taylor is to present on this evening.
That's right.
Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor, for the memo and for presenting on this. Oh, with the team.
Oh, cool. We got a team.
Nice, we have a team coming up, that's perfect.
Yeah, and then Dr. Taylor and Dr. DeLeon, just to keep in mind, we do have that time certain at 7:15, so if I cut you off, that's why.
Well, we might be lucky and be through before then.
From your lips to God's ears.
Good evening, everyone.
Evening.
Can you hear me? You have a report before you that provides the update for Pillar 1, as well as the supplemental materials.
I'd like to know if you had any questions or anything that you would like to highlight.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Taylor. Any questions from the board?
Are we gonna go through the report at all?
We can if we'd like.
I just think it's attached. The public thinks we're talking about it. I would be curious to review the contents of the report before limiting our questions.
Great, thank you. Dr. Taylor, if that's possible, that'd be awesome.
You're looking at a summary that provides our progress up to date for Pillar 1 of the district strategic plan for student achievement. Under Goal 1, equitable access and inclusion, you see our focus has been on ensuring that students have meaningful access to the academic programs and enrichment opportunities across their K-12 journey. Under Goal 2, equitable treatment, the district has concentrated on fostering safe, supportive, and dignified learning environments. Within the structure of the strategic plan, we have reported on actions completed on our way to meeting the objectives and provided updates on progress where appropriate. Also, you see where we're developing things because the plan is ongoing and growing as the time progresses. Looking ahead, we want to continue to monitor through annual review checkpoints between at the end of each year, 26, 27, 28, and then finally 29, and hopefully the plan will be completed. Ongoing reporting will include the creation of SEL walkthrough summaries, enrichment and transition activity reports, unified insight behavior reports, mental health and health services reports, and the appropriate Power School dashboards. We're looking to have dashboards at the board level, superintendent level, executive leadership level, as well as school level. We want to make sure that we have reports that provide us with clear, transparent insight into both implementation, fidelity, and measurable outcomes. It's important to note that the team continues to assess the resources needed for the work and will address both resource needs and related policy considerations in the Pillar 1 update in terms of the summary report that's provided at the end of each year. If there's anything you'd like me to focus on or pull out, I'll be more than happy to.
Thank you,
Or my
Dr.
team will be happy to.
Amanda?
I'm sure I'll have more questions, but I'll just go ahead and jump in. I just thank you for this rendition. We obviously made some adjustments and paused before we visited this, and this was a very friendly document to go through and see where we were at with the goal and the sub-goals, so thank you. There are a lot of notations that currently developing a process, which you alluded to. This document, we're into this a bit, like what, I can't remember the year it was initially created, but we're into it a year or two. So I'm curious when we expect to have the measurement, the data collection process and measurement plan for each of these sub-goals identified so that that tracking mechanism is in place to see how we're coming along and meeting the ultimate deadline, so to speak.
Most of these things we're in the process of developing now to have completed by the end of this academic year.
Okay.
So we're looking by the end of June to have these measurements in terms of the way that we're collecting data to be fully implemented and created.
Okay, so by
Or
June.
created and implemented.
So we're thinking June, okay. And then secondly, and I'm skimming through here, I don't have my notes well written, apologize. But I just want to I want to just express gratitude that I see that you're trying to isolate progress in subgroups that also, I'm sure you're not surprised me stating this, includes students with disabilities, but not only. Because what I've always said is if we are not specifically talking about all of our at-risk populations, we aren't necessarily seeing how their progress and their gains are in relation to these goals. So specifically breaking those down and seeing how those are aligning with these goals versus just a broad overview of 80% of our entire population that inherently does miss some of our at-risk populations. So circling back, thank you for breaking that down so that there is a concentrated effort to see what we need to do to bring all of our student populations within and align them with these goals and outcomes.
Oh, there's one thing I do need to highlight that I did not do, so I apologize about that. If you look at the subgroup information, the black line that's at 0% is where our major subgroup is. The dotted line that's to the north of that or to the top of that would be 10% above where that main group is. That bottom, the dotted line below that would be 10% below that. And so when you look at the bar graphs, that's the distance we are currently from the goal itself.
Thank you. I do have one question. I've kind of asked, and I'm escaping memory, my memory's escaping me. But this one does talk about the attendance piece, and I have spoken about how we need to wrap in truancy into this, not just chronic absenteeism, because both are very pertinent and relevant on helping our kids with their outcomes. When are we revisiting, or have we decided, when are we revisiting our goals to potentially look at adding truancy to our absenteeism measurement?
And I don't think that we've made a call on that quite yet, Amanda. I think if I'm understanding the request, or at least what you'd sent to board leadership and the district admin, is that something that needs to be wrapped into this goal, or is it something that needs to be brought into a policy committee discussion for further review and bringing back to the board? So it might be good for us to kind of clarify what exactly it is, because that you might be looking for in the request. It seems like it might be both, right? That there should be something outlined in here is what I think you've suggested, but I also think that leads to some policy around truancy that we have right now.
So do you want me to initiate the request by email to start that conversational process?
I think that would be helpful. I don't know if Dr. Grant, if you've had a chance to sit with that one yet. We haven't discussed it as a leadership team, but just in thinking about that request initially.
I'm not trying to get involved with my page right, but I would recommend that you kind of wait for a second. There's current legislation that's working through. If approved, will align the definition for chronic absenteeism with the truancy definition.
Okay.
And that might circle in a need for change in policy or process.
Yeah, which the legislation session is ending on Friday, and then we'll be seeing all of the outcomes, so at least scheduling it down a couple of months down the road makes sense for sure.
Cool. And it's not lost on us, Amanda, thank you.
Sorry, what?
And your request isn't lost on us. Ashley.
Yeah, so I admit that I'm a little bit confused because I thought we would have kind of the typical presentation we have, which I think is helpful for us to go through and hear a little bit more detail, but also for the public to follow along. I know not everyone streams every meeting, although I know a few people who do, but many people do refer to the content of the meeting. So I'm thinking about this change of format, and I'm trying to work through the way I wrote questions in the memo. One thing from the outset is that when we were asked to share feedback with board leadership when the presentation was postponed, I shared that I thought it would be most helpful when we got feedback if we knew what resources were sufficient for these pillars and what resource areas were still insufficient. So will we be addressing resource allocation at all? Like what areas need more resources, what we should be considering as board members in the budget cycle?
The report, the memo was done with the assumption that we'd be operating with existing resource lines. So the plan itself has been made with that in mind. There will be additional requests coming forward in a comprehensive manner, but we're planning right now with our existing resources, knowing that we have some limitations that we're facing.
Okay, as one individual member, I would just suggest that when we hear in these pillar updates what resources are insufficient, that helps us know where we're not aligning things to meet the goals. So if we see, chronic absenteeism was not impacted by X, Y, and Z actions, it may imply we need to change the actions, but it may also imply that we need to allocate more resources to those activities to make them function. And I think the reason we get the pillar updates is not just to know how things are going, but how we can support how things are going. And if we don't know how to allocate them in the budget cycle, it's a little bit like, no, it's not giving us any action that could help the district to be more successful. With that in mind, I had a couple of questions about specific items.
Board Member Anderson, can I ask for a
yeah, of
clarity
course.
point? So you're saying during the updates, it would be preferable in terms of a resource request rather than the summation report that's done in June?
I think so. As one individual person, I can't speak for everybody. I think it's helpful to know if I'm looking at a counseling item, You know, did we not meet this goal because the resources were insufficient, and should we be preparing to allocate resources to meet that goal? Or did we not meet that goal because we simply need to take more steps within the existing fee structure? That would help us to understand where we need to allocate resources in advance of getting that very large budget request in June, that we may not draw a line from the counseling presentation we heard to this, if that makes sense. And again, I'm just one person, but that's my opinion, which I shared. One thing I had a question about is it talks in the report about counselors pushing into 6 and 8 classes, and like we checked that box. But the counseling of specifically our 6th grade students was incorrect in a lot of instances, specifically where students were counseled out of AP Human Geography and Advanced Math when they attended Bryant Middle School as opposed to West ELP. So I'm curious what steps are being taken to address counseling errors in addition to making sure counseling occurs.
We've done a twofold approach. One is a general approach in which we implement it with the department as a whole, establishing expectations when it comes down to that. We're also developing scripts for counselors to follow as reference guides. That would be part of the counseling handbook in which we're operating to update at this time. Also, we're looking at individuals when we have that information come forward to see how do we need to work in terms of coaching cycles with those individuals to help them improve their practice.
That's really helpful to know how we're addressing that, and that we're reaching more students with counseling services and making sure they're correct. Later in the memo, it talks about the district level attendance initiative. And we've had some reports since this, but I don't know if we've had a report on it specifically since Dr. Connolly took her role. I'm wondering if the district level attendance initiative includes more than the incentives, programs, and rewards we hear about. If it's about like the letters going home, is there somewhere that points to what is the district attendance initiative?
Happy to talk to you about that. So this is an ongoing developing initiative that we're doing, and the first thing that we did was sign up for USBE's attendance initiative, which is statewide. Part of that includes a ton of resources that USBE has put together for all LEAs to use. This is something that we have shared with all of our school administrators that they can access. It includes things like monthly nudges that principals can share out through social media, parts of their newsletters that they can adapt to say, this is how we're doing with attendance, or this is the focus for the month. So just simple things that go a long way in communicating to our families, this is how we're doing with attendance, or this is the importance of attendance. That's one part of it, but then we keep coming back to it every month and share examples of what schools are putting in place to support attendance increase within their school communities. We do highlight schools every single month for multiple categories, not just for best attendance, because yes, we have that, but what we want to do is increase attendance. We want to decrease chronic absenteeism, so we are rewarding or celebrating schools for decreasing their chronic absenteeism for the month, and we are also recognizing them for having low chronic absenteeism, which is what we want to maintain within our schools. And then through our district attendance team, we're continuing to develop the initiative further to ensure that we have a strong foundation and that it's sustainable and that we can continue to implement moving forward.
And do we have attendance progress at the midway point of the year, or we don't have a report on that progress yet?
So our attendance, as far as this year is concerned, is very similar to last year. Percent of attendance is about 92% as a district. And then on the memo and the attachments, I've attached what it looks like as far as chronic absenteeism is concerned. So when we submitted this, our chronic absenteeism was about 24%. Now it's back down to 23%, so we're hoping to continue to decrease that before the end of the school year.
That's great, and especially as we're hearing in the public comment concerns about staffing reductions, I'm wondering if our business administrator can confirm whether chronically absent students limit the funding that we receive as a district.
I'm going to look to Sam to make sure I don't speak wrong, but we're not funded based on attendance. We're based on membership. So long as the student is enrolled in the school, that's what we're funded on, not so much of if they're actually at school.
That helps, thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. We have Annie.
Yeah, I've also had a little bit of a hard time wrapping my head around this report because there's so much in there kind of, but also so much not in there. But I appreciate the information that I do understand, and I just am wondering if you could maybe like walk through Appendix 1 with me, like the Rise English Language Arts Grade 3, just as kind of an exercise. So I'm understanding correctly of like what that data means.
Okay. When you look at that first graph, which is the Rise English Language Arts Grade 3, like I said, that top dotted line is 10% above our Caucasian population, which is, I mean,
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Is there any way that we could connect your computer so that
oh, yeah.
board members who might not have it on their laptops and also the public could see as well? Sorry to interrupt you.
If I break it, Sam will fix it.
And while you're doing that, just part of my question, sorry, this is maybe multi-pronged, but first of all, understanding where we're at with this data, and secondly, what initiatives are being done to move us towards our goal, and thirdly, how often are those initiatives being evaluated at either a school level or a district level? Because oftentimes I go to different schools, and for example, one school is using their land trust funds for reading interventionists, but year after year, their scores aren't changing. So what isn't working there? Or, you know, is it what do we need to do to move those scores? So kind of wondering if there's a trend across districts or if that's very school specific, et cetera.
Okay, you've asked for an explanation that would take a lot more time than we have right now. One is understand the relationship between what we call leading indicators and lagging indicators. And the measurement for this is our end of the year assessments, which are RISE, Aspire Plus, and Acadians.
Yeah.
Our schools develop strategic plans, school improvement plans that outline their strategies, their key goals that move this data. But the measurement for it would be those end of the year assessments that take place. So you might have IBPAs, which are incremental tests that take place during the year that measure our achievement, which in turn should predict how our kids do on the end of the year assessment. So there should be a correlation and a relationship between the tests they're taking during the year and the end of the year measurement which takes place.
Yeah, I understand that.
Okay.
I'm just saying, I don't want whole years to be using failed or ineffective tools.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? If we have this goal that's supposed to be achieved by 2029, for example, and every year we're doing the same thing, or we spend a whole year doing one thing that's not effective, I don't think we're gonna reach our goal, is the point.
That's why the evaluatory component that takes place as we go through the progress of looking at those land trust plans, those TSSA plans, which are wrapped into their school improvement plans, tells you what each individual school is doing in order to impact this information. So when you look at the measurement pieces which take place, which can be done quarterly, can be done every 90 days, might be done by terms, is dictated by that individual plan.
Yes, okay. Yes, I understand.
Okay.
Okay.
So if not, we can.
No, I understand. I was just wondering if there's a broader initiative that maybe area directors or something are implementing to oversee and make sure not only land trust plans, but general curriculum academically are actually moving the needle.
Yeah, we use the measurements that are embedded in our plans in terms of accountability pieces. So when you look at the district strategies, for example, the district has a strategy of using academic discourse to have an impact on academics. So yes, that's periodically measured, but that would be embedded in those school improvement plans, the measurement keys for that. I hate to I know I'm sounding redundant and I apologize about that, but really it's the individualized plan for the school is the school improvement plan.
Yeah.
And the district embeds its strategies in support of that plan.
Okay.
I'd like to add,
Yeah.
if I could, just a minute. This is perhaps our most aspirational goal in our strategic plan.
Yeah.
Closing achievement gaps is the grand challenge across schools across the nation. These are hardened by socioeconomic status and the way our communities and world is set up and uneven playing fields. So this is the most aspirational goal, and you can tell how far we are from it, the size of those gaps. everything that schools do is is attending to student achievement. So each piece of what they're trying to accomplish is about student achievement. And so that's always embedded in what they're just doing day to day. And I agree, it would be nice to have an answer to these. It is just the consistent hard work of doing the educating. Also, just to think about, one of the challenges with this is each time it's a static measure. And what it's not showing is if we get a student in pre-K, what happens to the size of their gap if they're with us longer. And it's one of the things that we're working with the assessment team to think about. How can we capture what our value add is over time rather than a static shot of what it is currently, so that we can say, as we had some data a couple of years ago that showed that the longer students are with us, the better they do on tests each year. So their science scores go up, their math scores go up, their English language arts scores go up, which shows the increased value over time. So I don't want to dismiss this, because this is the whole game here to me for education, but it's also the most difficult metric to move in all of our strategic plan, I think.
Yeah, so I guess I should have worded my questions a little bit more clearly. I understand that this is embedded in all of the activities every day, all of the curriculum, all of the student improvement plans. I guess I was just wondering if you could point to any specific initiatives that are working towards this in terms of the gaps between the different groups, or if there is no specific initiative because it's embedded into everything.
It's individualized by school.
Okay.
There's not a district-wide initiative except for the science of reading and literacy and language arts. And we'll, be focusing even more on literacy with the state effort that way. Some of those things that we're doing kind of district-wide to close those gaps, but a lot of this is dependent on each school. So these are the averages, of course, across, as you know, but in those improvement plans is the closest we have to particular initiatives to address achievement gaps and achievement generally.
If I may add to that, one thing that we are starting to do is we just created an equity committee, and we have equity audit. We've created an equity audit tool. So what we want to do for the rest of the school year is meet with this equity committee, ensure that the tool is appropriate and it's going to give us the information that we are looking for to then train our administrators to utilize the tool, and then based on the gaps that come up, that they can also address those gaps from their school improvement plan that they've created for the year, and continue to add action steps or revise their action steps if they needed to do that.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna go, we're a minute away from our 7:15 time certain, so before, nice try, I know Dr. Taylor, I'm sorry, but I'm gonna go ahead and just ask that we take a little bit of a break, and once 7:15 hits, we'll go ahead and start with the time certain public comment for the student fee schedule. So if y'all wanna sit and hang out, or if you wanna move back to the audience, you're welcome. And Dr. Conley, I'm sorry, I got your name wrong.
That's okay.
Okay, thank you. All right. We have hit our time certain at 7:15 for the 2026-2027 school fees schedule. Again, this is a draft with board policy S10 student fee and fee waivers, and S10 administrative procedures, student fees and fee waivers. There is a sign-up sheet on the table here. If anybody is here to speak, if you would please come forward to the table, sign your name with all the pertinent information that's asked there. You will have 3 minutes, similarly to what we have in our regular public comment period. But we will sit for a few minutes to see who might be here to speak to our time certain student fee schedule this evening. Talk amongst yourselves. No, I was kidding. Coffee talk, you know? And please note that with these time certain public comment periods, we will go as long as there are people to speak. So. And please keep in mind that there will be another opportunity for public comment similar to this topic at the next board meeting as well. We'll give it just another few minutes. We'll just give this until 7:20 if nobody comes up to speak. All right, it is now 7:20. Seeing that nobody was here to speak to the time certain public comment on student fee schedule, we will go ahead and resume our presentation and Q&A with Dr. Taylor, Dr. Alec Martin, and Dr. Bree Daly. Oh, Bree Conley. Almost did it again. Sorry. So many years of, anyway, thank you. I think where we left off, Board Member Romano, did you get your questions answered, or do you have any follow-ups?
Yeah, I guess I just, this is really important to me. And I'm just wondering if, like district-wide, are there more specific initiatives that address this head-on? And it sounds like the equity committee could be one of those, to at least recognize where people are and then, tailor their school improvement plans accordingly. But just generally knowing that this goal is so difficult because it's grounded in socioeconomic status and other community factors, I think it's hard for us to just say there's one initiative per se, but that's why I'm wondering, like, if you could point to any specific initiatives or any schools that you feel like have made progress in this regard. But
We can come back at a future date and supply the board with aligned information that comes from the strategic plan, the school improvement plans, and those key strategies and action steps that are taking place within schools to say, hey, we've noticed that several schools are doing this as a strategy, and it's having a positive impact at that school. These following schools are doing this strategy and putting these things in place. And so that would lend itself to, I believe, what you're asking, what individual action steps are taking place and key things that are occurring within buildings to leverage and close gaps.
yes, thank you.
I have student board member Foss and then board member Jefferson.
Yes.
Hold up, before we get started with the next questions, you didn't want any questions about the particular graph that we're being shown?
No, I think it's fine. I was just
Okay.
wanting to discuss this as an example, like for language arts, third grade, is there something that's going on that's you've seen improvements, or are you expecting, for example, is there a subgroup like the MLL subgroup that you've seen particular gains or something like that?
When you look across the bottom of the chart, you see the names of the individual subgroups. When you look at our multiracial group, you'll see for the first one, which is the example chart we're using, they're within the goal already. They're within 10%. So that we want to make sure that we can isolate intentionally what we're doing with that group and to maintain those practices with that group in order to keep them within the projected area of that 10% within the main group. So that's a common example. And like I said, the dotted line across the top is 10% above the main group. The solid line across at 0% is where the main group is. And the dotted line that's below that is the 10% away from the main group. And we want everybody, all the bars in 2029 to be within that scope. And that isn't what they call big, hairy, audacious goals. That's one of those goals.
Yeah.
Now,
Foss?
Yeah, from the student perspective, I know that students don't always put their best foot forward in testing. And so I was just wondering if when we're performing these tests and looking at the ways that we can collect the best data possible, are we looking at the differences between student intention, student ability, and student capacity? So like, if it's an ability problem, then we can teach more, we can teach better. If it's a capacity problem, then maybe we wait longer to expect certain things of the students. And then if it's an intention problem, which is what I've often observed, is there something we can do about class or home culture, for example, like emphasizing to parents and asking them to emphasize to their children about the importance of certain testing, why we're doing it, or having them emphasize, like, you can do this. Anything that is addressing the intention side. Are we already focusing on it? Are we focusing on other things? Just interested to know what you're looking at.
that's part, I would say we are addressing all three, and that's why you see strategic action steps in the plans that are embedded for all three, not only just the literacy goals, the attendance goals, but also the school climate and culture goals. Because the school climate and culture should address those intents. How do we build engagement? How do we build value for these processes so students give their best?
Could you give an example of something that would be addressing intention?
I would say where you have elementary schools that do progress steps toward testing, where they're celebrating or they're acknowledging that the test is going to take place in April. So they do rallies, they do things to build engagement for the assessment piece or preparation toward that process. I say that would be intent, because what they're doing is they're building the value of the assessment for students to give their all on those assessments in those elementary populations. I think that's the easiest one to lean forward to.
Okay.
I would just add to that, we're doing a lot of work to improve our school climate and culture, and when students are happy in buildings, they tend to perform better on tests, and get better grades, attend more, all of those things. So the SEL initiatives that we have been implementing for the last several years have had an impact on that, and we hope will continue to do so. It's really, really hard to draw those direct correlations, right, between climate and academic performance. But what we do know is that as climate improves and as kids report that they feel safer and happier in their schools, just coincidentally, academics also improve.
Yeah, that's wonderful to hear. And of course, you know, I'm a high school student. These sort of things, these programs are always evolving, and it's going to take a while to reach. So I'm just glad to hear that that's 100% being considered.
Thank you, Foss. Charlie?
I just wanted to know if you could talk a little bit more, Dr. Conley, about the equity audits that are being created and that will be happening in the future.
Yeah, so we started out with the tool, and it's just to measure how our students belong in schools. How do they see themselves represented through the curriculum, through in their classroom, all the different foundational pieces that we have at every school to ensure that every child belongs and that they know that they are important to being there and that their families are also recognized as well. So just multiple aspects of it.
And is that through a survey? Is that what the tool is?
So it's a kind of like a checklist where we go around the school and then we just look for things, items.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Any other questions in the first round? Brian?
Okay, this would go to the assessment piece. And I mean, Foss, I think that you were focused on that. I've heard others refer to assessment, and of course, myself as a teacher. Assessments, there's a real balancing act, if you ask me, when it comes to assessments. I think you can run into assessment fatigue, both on the part of the students and on the part of the teachers. So I don't know if this is a topic for further discussion, but I think that it's a really critical piece in how you gather data. And I mean, I would just share my experience in the classroom where children are going, another test. And I have to tell you, this teacher was going, yeah, another test. I mean, sometimes, and I think I've said this before, as a teacher, because yes, we want to make sure that we're determining whether they are grasping what it is that we're teaching. But what we also have to balance is, are we giving them enough instruction time that they can grasp it, or are we taking a lot of instruction time assessing? I think those are important pieces in assessment discussions.
Thank you, Brian. Amanda, did I see your hand go up? Okay, I think if there's nobody else in the first round, we can jump to the second with Amanda, and then Ashley.
Mine was just a quick comment in regard to the initiatives regarding the chronic absenteeism. Having a child that has her illnesses as well as a lot of doctor appointments, too many. This is the first year that I've received an email as to what can we do to help support you and your child in improving attendance kind of thing. And so they can go do the doctor's appointments for me, but regardless, I can see that the effort is making it down into the buildings, and there is an attempt, even though situations like mine, it's not necessarily fixable. So I just wanted to point that out, that the efforts to try to remedy attendance where it's possible is being seen and rolling out in the buildings. So that's it.
Thanks, Amanda. Ashley?
Yeah, I want to follow up to Board Member Romano and Jensen's comments. I too have a lot of curiosity about using standardized tests as our primary measure in an equity report, and I would be more interested in seeing measures of climate. In past board meetings, I've shared an analogy where if you have a baby and they have a temperature of 105 degrees but no symptoms, after you gave them Tylenol, they still had no symptoms, and the thermometer again said 105, you would know you did not have a sick baby, you had a broken thermometer. And so I continue to believe we should acknowledge that our thermometer of standardized testing is broken and look to additional measures that could supplement these reports. We've heard a lot about too much standardized testing from members of the public comment period as well. I get concerned that our most highly impacted schools also limit their enrichment in favor of testing preparation to try to change these charts. So I think it should occur to us that the most affluent students in the district have the most access to arts, athletics, and activities which make them most likely to succeed, not their standardized test score. And when we limit enrichment activities to intervene academically, I'm concerned we're spinning our wheels. And I'd like to hear from reports like this more about the experts in these departments where they feel we should put our resources. To go back to my original comment, where should we put the resources to make the most difference? And I would value that in the next update, because otherwise we're just looking at the same colored bar charts over and over and over. And I would also value that this report does talk about measuring enrichment access, and it says you're working on a tool to measure enrichment access. I think sometimes when we analyze these, we look at academic intervention access, but not other things like arts, athletics, and activities that actually help kids want to be at school and enjoy being there. How are we going to measure enrichment access at our schools to make sure it's equitable?
Right now, the reason we're developing a separate tool is because we originally looked at having them submit reports. And the reports would track attendance at those activities, the number of kids engaged in those activities. And we thought that that was labor intensive for the schools. And we didn't want to create additional paperwork for that. So we're trying to work on how do we warehouse that, how do we utilize technology to accomplish that goal for us, to where they can enter that data at the schools, maybe through our, well, I don't want to go into detail as we're working on it. So that's how we're trying to create it. We're trying to use technology in our existing student management systems in order to create reporting mechanisms that then won't be labor intensive, but we'll track attendance, we'll track the number of parents, we'll be able to be broken down by subgroups to provide that information for us.
I'd also be curious how master scheduling impacts that if we get another report on this pillar. The reason why is I've worked for a long time as a specialist in district schools across Utah, and what's most common when I go as a guest specialist in any kind of role that I've had for 15 years, they say, you'll work with this group, but half the kids will be in ELD. And you'll work with this group, but half the kids will be in resource. So the kids in receiving ELD and receiving resource don't get to do dance, don't get to do art, don't get to do the activities that are most common because the master schedule requires so much intervention that we're not able to have the things that schools that don't require intervention get every single day with no difficulty. And so I would be curious as we conduct these equity audits and look at enrichment access, does master scheduling, is that a tool where we could allocate more resources that would help district staff create master schedules that are less prohibitive to students accessing enrichment?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Ashley.
Yeah, and so follow up with that. So it looks like you are going to be measuring extracurricular, so outside of school hours, access, as well as enrichment during school hours?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. The other question I had was, it looks like here that it says interviews were conducted with community leaders and stakeholders to understand barriers to regular attendance, and I'm wondering what feedback you got and how you're implementing that.
Yeah, so I'm doing a series of focus groups with multiple parent groups of students who are at risk of not graduating on time. And this can include anything from our multi-language learners to our SPED students to our Indigenous students to Pacific Islander students. So what has come out of that preliminary themes are a sense of belonging in schools, a connection within their school, and then transportation can be a barrier to some students who might miss the wake-up bell or their alarm. And so if they miss the bus, then they can't get to school that day, and their parents won't send them to school walking because they're little ones. And so they miss the opportunity to go to school for that day. And then the other part of that is sometimes we are under the impression that if we miss 1 or 2 days, it's okay. And then those days continue to add up, and we don't understand the importance or the impact that that has on a student's academic growth for the entire school year. So it's a lot about communicating clearly with our families that every single day does make a difference, and that we want our students to be there, and what impact it does have in their learning.
Thank you.
Any other remaining questions? Foss and then Brian.
I would just like to reflect the opinions shared about testing fatigue and the necessity to also look at that. I've observed that in addition to the other things that I mentioned. So,
I appreciated Board Member Anderson's comments about those extracurricular programs and opportunities. Okay, I know that I'm back in assessments, but I mean, I think that that's a critical piece, because many of the reading tests that I was providing to my students, and these tests were required, the reading material was, I hope you're really looking at those assessments and seeing if they are equitable in what you're asking those students to read about. In some schools, I don't think that it's equitable for them to be reading about a ski trip or a day at the beach. Those students do not have enough background information to be able to navigate through that kind of reading. So when you're talking about that, I hope that you're looking at it across the assessments as well. It's frustrating when you have a student who is a good reader, and I know they're a good reader because I've read with them, but they are presented with material that is completely unfamiliar to them.
Thank you, Brian. Seeing no other questions, I do want to revisit Board Member Anderson's request about budget alignment with pillar updates and resources that are directed to goals and initiatives to make an actual difference. I know that was her individual opinion, but we're also trying to make sure that if that is the direction or the will of the board, that we give the superintendent and you, Dr. Taylor, and your team, with at least that emphasis, about what to prepare for next. So just kind of looking at the board, knowing that we're not giving specific direction, but is that kind of similar across the board members' way of thinking about how we plan and schedule upcoming presentations on this moving forward? Okay, I'm seeing some head nods, some thumbs up. Dr. Grant, do you have any questions relative to clarity, or Dr. Taylor on that request?
Only that even in talking with Alan recently, I think you're right. I mean, there are many more resources that we could use to attack any number of these goals differently. Given our current budget, our current size of the pie we have right now, we would have to be thinking about removing it from other places to place it in this, and to get to the size we need, we're actually looking at later on thinking about this request to increase taxes, right? That would give us a larger pie, in a sense, to give more resources to some particular things. I don't want to discount the idea that we need to think about rearranging our current resources to fit needs, which is what Dr. Taylor was saying. Within the current budget, we've tried to think about the strategic plan and how we're trying to meet these goals, to provide a great many more resources that would be needed to move the needle in some of these areas would just require a larger budget, actually. So some of those conversations we're having, we can bring to you those ideas. I think they're difficult to fulfill even in this next budget cycle in some ways, because the limitation, the flexibility we have is limited because all of the programs we spend money on, we have deemed of value. And so then it's just rearranging those values so that we spend our money in different ways. But thinking that through, I think, can be useful in moving forward.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Grant. B.A. Kearsley, do you have anything that you would follow up to on the superintendent's remarks?
Well, let's see what board member Anderson says first, and then it might need to follow up.
Okay.
Okay, I would say we've had some conversations about what the legislature has recommended all state agencies do, including higher ed, which is not to reduce their funding, it's to cut and reallocate funding to meet specific goals. And I think that one strategy we can use is look at what could be cut and reallocated. That what's helpful in these reports is not just hearing about our successes, it's hearing about where we are still falling down and also what things were just not successful. We tried da-da-da initiative, and it didn't work, and it costs $300,000 a year. We'd like to stop paying. I mean, we had this conversation when SEL was a priority and it no longer became a priority. We did not want to spend more money on SEL curriculum that was not being utilized effectively. That's a very good example of cut and reallocate, something that the board already indicated they no longer supported as a goal. So I would suggest that, of course, if there was infinity money, we would do a lot of things differently. And there is not infinity money. And, there's not. However, it's our job as a board to decide where the best ways to allocate the money are. And if we don't get regular recommendations on things like that, we end up doing our job in a haphazard way without having the best information and recommendations from everyone who works in the district office. So I would suggest it's less about creating new money to add to the burden of taxes, but it's more about reallocating the money that exists to where it is actually most effective in these reports. So these reports tell us what we're doing well, what we're not doing well, and it would be great if an additional component suggested, the money being served on this SEL virtual curriculum is not effective. We'd like to suggest that you reallocate it to counseling training or whatever it is where we identified that there was an issue. So I think it's more about cut and reallocate than this idea that anyone believes there's infinity money, which of course there is sadly not.
Alan?
Yeah, I want to add another challenge. As we get through the budget process, you'll probably hear me say multiple times, 86%-ish of our budget is personnel. So reallocating sometimes means either reallocating people, refocusing what they're doing. I mean, so we're largely within our budget dealing with individuals and employees versus just, there is still that other component of, hey, let's stop buying this particular software or supply and instead do this with it. But that's an additional challenge when we're talking the budget, is so much of it is personnel. But that doesn't mean we don't keep working at it and keep focusing those dollars to where they need to go.
I think we can end the discussion there. Thank you, Dr. Taylor, Dr. Martin, Dr. Conley. Thank you, board, for all of your questions and for digging deep into this strategic plan, Pillar 1. Really appreciate it. We'll move on in our agenda to the discussion agenda. Our first item there is the 2026-27 board calendar dates. They are attached to the agenda. They look pretty good to me. I went through and looked through where there might be potential conflicts with elections and caucus nights. I don't see any. So if there's any discussion to it, please let us know and we can hear your thoughts on it before ideally we move this to the action agenda for approval.
I move that we send the 2026-27 board calendar dates in Exhibit 3F1 to the action agenda.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All right, seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote starting with Board Member Romano.
Annie Romano, yes.
Ryan Jensen, yes.
Amanda Lungway, yes.
Bryce Williams, yes.
Charlotte Fife Jefferson, yes.
Ashley Anderson, yes.
Salazar, yes. We will revisit that on the action agenda. Our next item is final land trust plan reports. Dr. Grant, who is presenting this to us this evening?
Well, Dr. Taylor has stepped out.
Dr. Grant.
Dr. Marriott's here. Hooray.
Don't have anything for you. You have the reports. I'm here for any questions. Yes, you have the reports and have had chance to review those, so if you have any questions, I'm here for you.
I just have a quick question. Kind of based on my previous question. The school land trust reports indicate, you know, this was our goal. Hello, okay. Sorry, and it didn't work, or it did work, or it kind of worked. Is there like a long, kind of more of a long-term, like bird's eye view that SCCs can get, saying like, oh, 4 years ago you tried that and it did not work. So maybe don't try that exact same thing again, or, you know, use the funds in a more effective way. Let's get some data or whatever. I'm just wondering, because I've been to a lot of SCC meetings and a lot of times they're saying, oh, we'll do the same thing as last year or similar. But I'm thinking, I wonder how effective that approach is.
Yeah, that's a good question, and one of the requirements for SCC postings on school web pages is a direct link to the Land Trust Plan platform where all patrons can take a look at multiple years of plans, and I think that's good due diligence for SCC members and any other stakeholders to take a look. Yes, if we've been doing the same thing for a long time, you could say if we're not meeting goals, maybe consider something different, but also just consider changing landscape and changing conditions in schools. Some schools may provide kindergarten parapros out of those funds. And, you know, whether you would say we're meeting the goals, now we don't need to do that, or we've been doing it for a long time, we haven't hit a pinnacle, but the need is still there. So it's pretty nuanced, and that's one of the reasons land trust is so interesting, is that it is up to individual school communities with parent input. So you're going to see a lot of different things, and some schools feel really comfortable with the approach they're taking year after year, and they may choose to do the same thing year after year. I hope they are all getting some good data from principals and using the results on the Land Trust platform to inform their discussions and any other help that they might need from the district.
Yeah, thank you. From my limited experience, it does seem that a lot of the parents on those committees rely on the principal or district members in some options at least to consider. So I'm just wondering, I guess that just happens if someone requests that information. There's not just like an endless treasure trove that they can just open a folder and see all the potential options for their land trust money.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the data our principals are bringing to their SCC for discussion is from the data gateway and from the Land Trust platform, and it is available to everyone. You know, all people can access that same information. Principals, I think, often do a really excellent job of bringing the pertinent data. There's a lot of data. It's not all the right information for making decisions. So the principal is at the heart of running the school, and they know best what the main challenges are. I do always hope that they're working with really open discussion and they're working towards consensus, and they're a great source of information for the SCC and any other patrons too. So.
Thank you. Amanda, and then Ashley.
Thank you, Annie, for your question. Like, I mean, I hear everything you're saying. It really is site-based. It depends on the makeup of the SCCs and how the principal drives it and how the participants, what their knowledge level is in joining in that conversation. And if there isn't really an educational piece to empower the participants to know how to navigate and advocate for it. That's a challenge. Like my time on when I served on the SEC, I actually got to the point where I was just like, I'm just gonna pull up a whole bunch of lands trust goals throughout the entire district so I could start seeing how other schools were tackling these different pieces and structuring it, and that actually brought light that where a school that I was on just did one goal, others did potentially more, and broke down it into different segments, and it was something that the school that I was serving on hadn't thought about that, and so it opened up a conversation and a different approach with the goals. So you don't know what you don't know. I think that the maybe another I went to that SEC training, was it last month, or I can't remember
January.
track of time now.
Yeah.
But sharing out that as a potential tool and a resource and such would be beneficial for the SEC communities and the parents that are trying to make a difference but don't necessarily know how to as they're navigating it. So it's almost self-initiated a lot of times. So just FYI, was there tackling those, like how to support our SECs and achieving what we're trying to accomplish with this objective.
Yeah, and we are already planning for a meeting similar to that, but at the beginning of this coming year.
Nice.
And probably more than one next year. As we
Kind
go
of
through.
linking that piece in there is to go look at what other schools are doing, pull them up, explore it, see it, and letting them know they can do more than one goal and different ways on tackling that, because a few of the teachers were like, I didn't know, that's a great approach, let's do this. And then there was some discussion back and forth on how to do the wording and stuff, and it became quite a great exercise in trying to create a plan that served all of the students in our complex school. Anyway.
Thanks, Amanda. Ashley?
Yeah, Dr. Marriott, you clarified something for me via email that I want to share with the public and make sure I understand, which is about carry forward. So when I reviewed the reports, some of the LEA entered carry forward was over 10%, even though the schools entered was not over 10%. And it's my understanding from you that this carry forward is because of school closure and different changes related to school closure, and that all these plans are, in your review, compliant with all the requirements at this point, even if there's a mathematical discrepancy.
Yes, that's correct. And we did receive confirmation from the state, kind of a congratulations, all your plans came in compliance with the 10% carry forward requirement. So, and I'd be happy to explain that discrepancy again if you'd like.
I think I understand, as long as we know
Okay.
the discrepancies related to school closure,
Yeah.
just clarifying that for everyone. If you look at a plan, and we approved it, and you see the carry forward is greater, that it's for this unique reason and it's
Right.
acceptable. I think just clarifying that helps me feel great about
Good.
approving the plans. I also just want to take the rest of the time to reiterate what I have shared many times over 3 years, which is that our USBE training materials make it clear that school boards have a responsibility to consider when we have global requests that we include those in the district budget rather than let the same plans roll forward year over year. And it isn't a secret that I'm frustrated we've not done that. Over the last 3 years, more than 95% of the plans that I have reviewed are for academic intervention. So I would again suggest that we consider how to provide academic intervention without asking people to use their land trust for that purpose. And one suggestion would be looking at our coaching model to identify how and whether staff can work more directly with students to reduce the burnout that we hear reported from teachers, that they want more support for students rather than more coaching support for them. And I'd like to consider, as Board Member Romano stated, that what happens when these plans roll forward but don't show academic gains, and we also know some of those academic measures are problematic, as we talked about. I think one way to empower SCC members to come up with more creative solutions is taking this academic intervention burden off of their plate. Because so many of them are requesting it, it becomes our responsibility to find a way to provide it, because their academic needs among school sites should be unique. And the plans we received are perfectly valuable. They meet all of the criteria. We signed them, we approved them, but almost all of them are the same, almost none of them are unique to the school site. And what that means is it becomes our job to provide those things. So I'd really like us to consider how we can take academic intervention off the plate of schools before the next time we go through this cycle. I'd really like to see us make headway on that rather than repeat this process again in 1 year.
Thank you, Ashley. B.A. Kearsley, do you have any thoughts? I know we've certainly talked about it over the years, as Ashley mentions, but.
Well, we've talked about it. Yeah, and I think what Board Member Anderson points out, you know, again, this is a repurposing resources versus new resources. You know, so in the event that, you know, every school has the same thing in their plan, that doesn't generate new resources for the board to say, here's new money, go do it. Those are always options, but I think you first look at where can we repurpose resources to address those needs, and then we look at, do we expand the pie?
Just, this is a little anecdotal, but and maybe a little controversial, but I do think there's opportunity even from district staff to do some intervention with students. When I worked at the Hillsborough Education Foundation, which is in Hillsborough County, Florida, that's one of the largest school districts in the country. My specific position was both an oversight position for all the mentors in the district, but also I myself mentored and students. And the reason why that was helpful was because then I was having hands-on experience that was, what is the word I'm looking for? At the same time, simultaneous, concurrent with all the other mentors, and we were all in it together. Because that way I was able to be more effective in my role of training mentors, and also I was a mentor myself, and we were always short mentors, so why not throw me in the ring, right? So I know this is just throwing it out there, but I think we can be creative in terms of a lot of qualified district staff or other administrators who are obviously maybe veteran educators, and they're in the positions they are because they have additional training and are doing great things, but maybe they do need a little bit of time with students to supplement, which is also then beneficial for them in their leadership. So that's just my 2 cents, but we'll see what we can do.
Any other, Brian?
Board Member Anderson, I think that insight is helpful. That what I am grappling with there is that is a paradigm shift, because what I have seen is the way that SCCs function is, okay, we've got these academic challenges and they see that, and I think there are always going to be academic challenges, and so that's where their focus goes. So one of the things that I have tried to talk about is how critical I think SCC training is and SCC support, because, I mean, Board Member Romano, I think you referred to this, Board Member Anderson, I thought when you were commenting about your experience, I don't know if you were the SCC chair, but you are looking at these other SCCs and what they're doing. I don't think that happens a lot. And I think that what I would suggest is that we decide, is this something that really is a priority? And I'm not saying, okay, make it, a board priority, but is this something that is really important? And if it is, then we've got to invest in it and figure out how we do this. I'm, again, drawing on personal experience, but okay, in the school you have the school improvement plan and the SIP or whatever, and that comes up every year, It's the same thing with the SEC, and sometimes I think it turns into, well, here we go again. Okay, we got to get this done. Okay, how long is this going to take? And it turns into just an exercise. But this is a really critical exercise because we're talking about how we're using our resources, and we're looking at how we're going to make improvements. So I think that this requires innovation. It requires a commitment to looking at how we make this more than just, okay, one more thing that we got to get done.
Thank you, Brian. Any other comments? Let me see where I'm at. Amanda, and I'm sorry, Annie, I let you speak too soon. That was my bad. So, before I move it to Amanda, Bryce or Charlotte, do you have anything that you'd like to add to this first round? Okay. Amanda, we'll start with you on the second.
I'm not going to profess to be an expert in lands trust and SEC, but I do want to point out that on the lands trust website, it specifically states that the SEC is, they determine the greatest academic needs. So we're talking about pointing out how the lands trust goals are determined by the SEC is talking about academic intervention, which is exactly what's supposed to be happening. Whether it's the same thing over and over, I definitely get that piece. Like if we have a continual issue that's the exact same, figuring out how to resolve that to improve those gains within the schools, I definitely want to pay heed to that. It's something we need to look at, but those lands trust monies are looking at the greatest academic needs, so it's inherent in the equation. So,
thank you, Amanda. Ashley?
Yeah, I would just respond to what Board Member Johnson and Longwell said, which is that nothing I indicated said we wouldn't consider academic needs. But the training videos we watch indicate that when the academic needs are global, every single school or almost every school reports the same academic need. It becomes the district board's responsibility to consider that need, because the idea of land trust is that the academic needs of a school should be unique to their school site. It should not be that everyone has the same academic need. So to take that off the plate of people is not to say they would not still have an academic need. They still have to comply with state statute. It's that the range of academic needs is vast. And people can certainly say, we don't provide the fine arts core, right? And that's an academic need because it's a core subject and it's not assessed. And land trust materials do prefer assessed subjects on some level. They encourage chairs to consider that, but it is not a requirement. They encourage them to consider it because it's easier to measure your success compared to providing, a full-time BTS arts specialist instead of a half-time and then measuring your literacy scores, which you can certainly do. But the idea is everyone's academic need is unique, not that the needs would become unacademic if we took them off the table. That it's our responsibility in the training we receive to look at global requests. That's the language the verbiage uses. When a request is global, it becomes our responsibility to consider. And the request for academic intervention is global. There are sub-questions about that. Is this academic intervention working? If year over year, the scores are the same, There's a lot of things to be asked in the budget cycle. And the suggestion I provide is only a suggestion because, as you point out, it's a paradigm shift. We provide one kind of coaching model for educators. We don't provide an intervention model, although every kind of coach and department works differently based on the feedback I receive sometimes from school sites. But I think we're not in the position to necessarily make the recommendation, but we are in the position to say, as a board, we want to fulfill the requirements of our training, which is almost all of the requests are for intervention. So we would like staff to consider how to better fund intervention in the budget, even if that means reallocating or shifting funds, recognizing that there's no new money. It would not change what the SCC is statutorily required to do, which is look at the greatest academic need. It just takes one academic need off of their plate.
Thank you, Board Member Anderson. I'm going to go ahead and take my time too and more or less kind of direct some questions to B.A. Kearsley, Dr. Grant, and Dr. Merritt, and Dr. Taylor too. you know, previously in another agenda item with the Pillar 1 mid-year update, we talked about you working on a plan or some kind of feedback in the next update about what it would take to look at alignment, budget alignment towards the strategic plan and the goals that we have there relative to reallocation and maybe some tax increases. Would it be too much to ask that a similar exercise or process recommendation be developed to be shared with the board at a future date about all of the realities associated with tackling something like this, being that it is a paradigm shift, knowing that it does have some emphasis in the training that we all get as board members across the state, just so that the board has a comprehensive understanding of what kind of undertaking this is. If it's pretty straightforward or if it's a huge undertaking, might be helpful for us to understand about how we tackle this and move forward.
Yeah, I mean, I had a thought during this conversation. I think one thing we can maybe do better, I know Dr. Taylor and his team are often meeting with the schools to say, how are you using your resources? How are you, working towards your goals? Maybe we as the budget people bring ourselves into some of those conversations for each school, maybe at least once a year, to review how are you using your funds and how, because I think in the budget department, we talk about how are you using your funds. We don't maybe necessarily get to, and how is it getting you towards your academic goals? And so I'm thinking we add that, and then we can kind of bring that as a report. I mean, that is a large undertaking to meet with every school and go over their budgets and not just their budget themselves, but in correlation with their goals. But I think it might be a good undertaking and help, because what I want, is as we say, well, we're using all our trust funds for academic interventions. Well, what are you using it for? And, what are you using your other resources for as well? Before we add new resources, really get an analysis of what are you using it for. And maybe we can repurpose some of those or redirect some of those resources and help schools and department heads focus on not just the how much something costs, but how effective it is, and work on that. I would say we wouldn't be presenting that to the board in the next month or so, but I think that's maybe some cross efforts that the budget department and the finance department can work with school leadership to kind of circle that around.
That was my next question too, Alan, was like a timeline, a realistic timeline. And I know that you probably can't come back in a month with that suggestion kind of answered for us. But do you think that you could come back with a potential recommendation or multiple recommendations about how we might consider that paradigm shift moving forward?
Right. What I think would be probably effective is as we get to the end of this school year, we start reviewing with the schools the actuals from the previous year. They've already kind of set their budgets, but that doesn't mean they can't readdress, but really with the goal, because we start doing the budgets again in January of, hey, what can we do different with the resources? Like Board Member Anderson said, we wish we had infinity money, but infinity money does not exist. So knowing that here's our square box, how can we work together as a team to maybe think a little bit outside of what you've always done? If it's working, then I think keep doing it, but maybe if it's not working, then what are some things we can help them see or work with to do something a little different with those resources? And that would be, more of like a December, January kind of discussion with the board of, here's what we found out last year, we've had further discussions, and here's kind of where we may be redirecting some of these schools with their discretionary money.
No, I hear that too, and if I'm hearing Board Member Anderson correctly, I think it's like a global type of ask or need that we're seeing in these reports and plans. If that could also be incorporated, like what is the fiscal dollar amount to take the district taking on something like that intervention and academic intervention work, so that it is off of the plates of schools and those resources could be prioritized differently on those SEC and SIC teams. If I'm hearing you correct, Ashley, is that, yeah.
Can I clarify one thing about the timeline? I would clarify that when I'm talking about this, we're approving these plans, but our SCCs have already met and put together new plans.
Yeah.
And the new plans, it is my best guess, I could be wrong, that again, 95% of the ones I review will be the same academic intervention plan. So recognizing that this would not be something that we can include in this budget cycle necessarily, because they've already committed to kind of roll forward a lot of these plans. Maybe some people are doing different things, but it would be my best guess that they are rolling forward a lot of the same plans from attending SCC meetings. So in that universe, we have a full year of runway to compare these final reports with the plans we get and identify why this global request keeps coming up. What it's our obligation to do timeline-wise is simply consider when in the timeline do we let school community councils know we have seen this global request and we are responding to it in the following ways so they can address their plans appropriately. But there's a very long lead time that this takes, which is in fact why we have not ever gotten the plane off the ground, in my opinion.
So we would be, I mean, the discussion we're having now would really be looking to affect the 27, 28 budget year and plan year.
That's my understanding.
No one, Charlotte, go ahead.
I just had a clarifying question. Were you saying that if you had budget or finance department employees, staff go into schools to look at how to, to look at smarter allocation of resources, or more effective towards their academic goals, would that be just kind of an advisory, like suggesting? You wouldn't be,
Right.
they make those decisions, right? But you would be.
Right. I mean, again, my finance people are accountants, not educators. So that's why it's important to team up with Dr. Taylor's team to go in together. So you have both the accountant view and the instructional view. But you're right, a lot of these end up being site-based decisions, but our principals want help. They want us to help guide them. So I think kind of building that finance instructional team together, I think will be beneficial.
Okay. So just to wrap two things up, right? One, is it the board's direction to BA Kearsley to come back to us at the end of the school year with some proposals or a recommendation about how we might discuss this and make some action towards it in the future? If that is, then we can start that process.
Yes.
Is there enough thumbs up? Okay. Seeing that. And then the second one, really appreciate the discussion as well. But I know that we do need to move these plans forward to the action agenda for some final decisions on that as well. So I would entertain a motion knowing that we've had a robust discussion as well.
So moved.
Is there a second? Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote starting with Vice President Jensen.
Brian Jensen, yes.
Amanda Longley, yes.
Bryce Williams, yes.
Charlotte Fife Jefferson, yes.
Ashley Anderson, yes.
Nate Salazar, yes.
Annie Romano, yes.
All right, that motion passes. We will now move on to item number 3, Testing Compliance Assistant, SPED, Job Reclassification.
Mr. Logan Hall's going to come up to present this one.
So I just want to note, so this position was discussed in our latest Board Finance Committee. So Logan Hall's going to kind of go over what's in the memo and some stuff, and then we'd like to have the Board Finance Committee speak to the discussion we had last week.
Absolutely. Good evening, board members, and thank you for the opportunity to be here to present this reclassification of this position. As a brief overview, what has happened to lead up to this request is that we had 4 positions historically that started out in an antiquated system which allowed an hourly employee to receive contract benefits. And so through attrition, which took 25 plus years, that just recently we had our latest employees leave this last December, which resulted in a need to evaluate this position and how we currently go about recruiting its replacement. Since we no longer do hourly contracts, I went in and wanted to do a complete assessment of what the position does, what is needed, as well as working with our special education department to recognize the changes that have happened over the years and new requirements that require a higher level of sophistication and a heightened requirement for requisites that the individual who performs these assessments has to have in their background in order to perform them appropriately. So we had longstanding employees leave, and now we have a whole new system that requires that the individual who performs these assessments has a bachelor's degree. We are making this proposal that we're moving toward a 201-day contract, and what that will do is the hope is that we would move from previously having 4 hourly employees to having 2 contract full-time employees, would give us more flexibility in hours as well as their contract, which would extend over the beginning and ending parts of the summer to provide timing for the completion of paperwork, meet with students before school starts to be able to complete assessments for students that are new to the district, and be able to have more flexibility within the school year itself so that employees would be able to focus on testing while students are available, whether that's during school time or in the evening hours as well. And so we would have greater flexibility there, which would help us decrease the amount of turnover that we've seen in these positions previously, and at least in 2 of the 4 positions, we had a great deal of turnover over the years. Also, by having personnel in this role, what we would hope to do is improve the turnaround time it takes for a special ed for a student to receive testing in order to receive special ed services. We want to reduce that turnaround time so that it's more efficient in the processing. Once students are identified and are recommended to receive the testing, we want that process to go much smoother and much faster. So it's for all of those reasons. We want to we also want to eliminate the need for contracted services, because currently we're having to pay an outside entity to be able to come in and perform these tests. And so we want to be able to eliminate that, have more control over that in-house, and be able to increase retention for individuals in these roles and increase the expertise of the individuals that hold these positions, which would really give us a better quality product and be able to retain employees by having greater job satisfaction and the ability to have long-standing training and just reduce that churn and burn of the daily grind of what happens more often with hourly employees. So with that, I would be happy to hear more of the discussion that took place without me and answer any questions I could.
Thank you, Logan. Ashley?
Yeah, I can go ahead. So if you get in a little time machine and go back to our USBA training, we talked about having 3 readings as a norm for topics. And we wanted to do that to ensure there's public input and appropriate deliberation. And in that discussion, some board members expressed some concern that requiring 3 readings could cause some constraint in instances where something that we expedite could really help the district and make us be more cost effective and benefit our departments. And in the training, I suggested, and I don't recall opposition, but I'm happy to be corrected, that in some instances we could have a committee, like the Finance or Policy Committee, serve as the first or second reading on a subject to make sure our work is as timely as possible and our committees are effective, but we still ensure topics get discussed 3 times. So in this instance, we talked about this job. We reviewed what the board norms were and suggested that the Finance Committee had no concerns about this job, and we appreciated the cost savings, and we felt comfortable recommending it to the board. But we considered that that could be the first reading that we talked about it and discussed. Like in our USBA training, it was suggested could be helpful to expedite a process when a staff member wants that process to be expedited. This discussion could serve as the second reading. And for the third reading, the board could either tonight opt to discuss it a 3rd time if there were a lot of questions about it, or direct it to be placed on consent agenda at the next meeting if there are not a lot of questions. The reason for doing that 3rd reading, in my individual perspective, is that while we've discussed it as a committee, and we've briefly discussed the job tonight, or other people can ask their questions now, the public hasn't heard about this job change until tonight, including staff members who may have an opinion. And so we want to make sure we don't advance it without the chance for public input input if such input exists. So that's sort of the logic we went through as a committee to review what our training is, decide how we want to make sure we talk about it 3 times while being really efficient, because as a committee, we had no issues advancing this job and would consider suggesting that you place it on consent. But of course, it's open to questions that people have about the job.
Amanda?
I have to say, so I'm obviously on the finance committee. In my recollection, we didn't go as in-depth into this review before it came to this board meeting. And so I'm glad that we're at least having this discussion so we can kind of flesh things out. And I definitely agree that having another reading after this one is very responsible and prudent, and is what I was going to advocate for as well for various reasons. I do feel like this is honoring prior discussions about looking at how we're using our monies and ensuring we are maximizing them, and to make sure that the positions or whatever we're doing is most beneficial for our students, teachers, etc. I have very strong concerns about this going from 4 positions to 2 positions, knowing that we have had I'm gonna try to word this well. Going from 4 to 2, ensuring that we are not contributing to long turn time on the initial assessments, the transition from out of school into school, because that is a harm to our students and to the families. I get that, having all of the criteria that you outlined for full-time this position, how it can resolve hopefully a large portion of that, but that's still 4 people down to, that's half the number of bodies, and a person can only accomplish so much. So I do need more information on that before I can support it, and I hope that the community is listening so that they can weigh in and their own experiences and understandings around this particular aspect. Additionally, the other piece, Bryce shared a USBE sent out, and in that it had news articles that it included, and one specifically talked about how special education has a higher percentage in our population, not just specific to our districts, but just in general, the diagnosis rate and such are increasing. And then I presume, without knowing the data, that as vouchers are pulling more students out of it, inherently our percentage of our students are obviously more too. So between a higher diagnosis rate, cutting back on an aspect of special education to ensure that kids are being identified in a timely manner. We have to be very careful about it. Have to be very careful. So, Ashley worded it well. I 100% support this is second reading. We come back for a third discussion before any decisions are made. I'm on the same page there, and we hopefully we can really flesh out from the community and teachers and stakeholders. If they feel like this is great, no brainer, great, we move forward. If there's a lot of concerns, then maybe we need to rethink this. So,
Brian?
I hesitate to comment because when I do, that's when I forget to turn the time off when I speak, and that's when it buzzes. But anyway, I'm going to be really brief, and I'm going to turn the buzzer off when I'm done. Ashley, thank you for giving that explanation. When I heard that it was being reviewed in policy or in the finance committee, I was anxious that we were observing those board norms that we talked about, and I think that it's important for the public, because they were participants in that conversation, to understand that we are using that finance committee as, I guess we're agreeing as a board that that was a first read. Do we feel okay with that? Okay, thank you.
Annie?
Okay, I turned it off.
Okay.
Just a point of information, for that third read, is that written in board policy, or that's just a best practice norm that we've adopted?
Yes.
Okay, yes. Then, I move to, oh, no, never mind.
I don't think, well, I mean, if you wanted to make a motion, you're welcome to, Board Member Romano, but I think what you've heard from other board members is they wouldn't be supportive of a motion that I'm assuming you might have meant to move it to action or.
I was gonna move it to consent agenda for next time, but maybe that's just your job, sorry.
I mean, if you'd like to make that motion, we'd have to move it to action first, which would end the
Oh.
discussion.
Okay, I'll let someone else do it.
Okay. Thank you.
I can add something.
1 second, Dr. Grant, you had your hand up.
I just wanted to clarify, Logan, the 4 positions, they weren't all full-time, right?
No, none of those were full-time.
Okay,
And
so it's not replacing, it's not 2 full-time I don't know exactly. Can you clarify how many, what that was, just to share that information? with the board?
Absolutely, and so, and I would hope that Business Administrator Kearsley could help here too. But the 4 positions were not full-time positions, and so having 2 full-time people wouldn't be the replacement of 2 for 1. We would really be looking at a smaller reduction in the number of hours. And I'd also like to point out that we've had great success in reducing, in other situations where we've had office personnel, where we've reduced hourly positions in favor of contract positions, where they've gone from 3 to 1 in certain situations, but have found that they've gotten greater efficiency and greater results on having a more qualified employee in the position over the long term, where they were able to see greater results and have a better work output and work product from 1 employee than they would 1 full-time person over 3 part-time employees. So I feel confident that 2 full-time employees with an extended contract in this situation would be able to make that balance from the 4 part-time employees moving to just the 2 full-time contract.
Well, and I'll add, and correct me if I'm wrong, that rarely have those 4 positions actually been filled over the last several years. So it's hopefully to get 2 solid positions that are filled on a regular basis. So we're not replacing 4 with 2, which has been said, but you'd be rare to find a case where we had actually 4 people staffed over the last several years.
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
Amanda, we've got some others, so Bryce or Charlotte, if you had anything you wanted to add? No. Okay, I do want to just add that I appreciate the board's flexibility. You know, as board leadership, I think Brian and I get a lot of feedback about how many readings are we going to be having for a particular topic, and so I appreciate that the board is in agreement about the flexibility that we had at the onset when we developed those norms. Hope that we can move things forward like this in the future, and well, I have hesitations about policy and finance being the first reading. Being that the board's in agreement about that, I'm okay, and I think moving forward, I would also, at a future time, like to see that grace extended to our agenda setting teams when they're developing agendas as well. If there isn't somewhat of an urgent need for positions or agenda items, just knowing that we've set that precedent, that would be, I think, a beneficial practice to adopt with that particular team, which is board leadership and an alternating board member every month. So I also agree that I think we should sit with it for a little bit and have that 3rd official reading at a future time. We'll move into the second round. Ashley?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that it was my understanding, I know Board Member Romano said she would be comfortable moving it to consent, right? Recommending that that's the direction of the board. I would agree with that. It sounds like other people would prefer that it is a comprehensive discussion. So I would suggest that people share their opinion with board leadership and they look for any kind of consensus and agenda appropriately. That would be fine with me. I know that this responds to the conversations we've had about the benefits of full-time work. The other thing I would add is that we did talk in our training about committees doing this work, because committees get specific assignments. They're assigned jobs, they're assigned policies, and so they have a little bit of a different role. I would be uncomfortable with an agenda-setting team making a decision about items that they don't have as much of a prescribed role. So it's something we talked about before. If we need to talk about it again in a study session, I'd be welcome to do that, or revisit the training conversation we had.
Thank you, Ashley. Amanda?
And I guess twofold. One, just going off of what was just stated, I've been doing some research on how we can tackle these things as board meetings, so maybe just a future study session where we kind of look at our board agendas in a different way, because I've been in my spare time looking at how board meetings across our state do stuff to like glean from, to see how we can resolve some of the hiccups we have. So the contract hourly positions, the 4 versus the 2 full-time, your full-time, you got identified that you're stating that it's supposed to be 40 hours per week, where we know that over 30 could be full-time, but this is saying 40. So of the 4 positions that existed, may not have been 100% filled, what was the average hour expectation per position for those 4? So if it was on average they're working 25 and times 4, that would be 100 hours a week for 4 versus 40 for 2. That's 80 hours of output per week if both were fully staffed. So on average, those contract hourly that we're replacing, what would the typical hourly output be for the ones that were staffed?
I'd have to research to know more of what the average hours that were put in, but by the individuals that held those positions, they were, excuse me, not allowed anything over 29 hours a week. But I do know from personal experience and knowing some of those individuals that they often didn't work more than 20 hours a week. But I would need to look more and to get the specific details.
Yeah, and that would be helpful to flesh out as we're looking at dropping it down to a max of 80 hours per week potentially.
Thanks, Amanda. If there are no other comments, I do appreciate Board Member Anderson's suggestion, thank you, Chelsea, that if you have feedback about the 3rd reading, if it is indeed another discussion item or if it is a consent agenda item, I'm going to go ahead and ask that if you could let board leadership know by Monday, the 9th, by close of business, because we do have board agenda setting the following morning on Tuesday, the 10th. So that would be appreciated if you could do that. Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
We may have to ask parliamentarian, but I believe there was a motion. Was the motion withdrawn?
Withdrawn.
Okay. Thank you, Alan. As always, appreciated. We will now move on to the action agenda. We have 3 items on the action agenda. The first item being the number 7 from the consent agenda, Safe Schools, number 26-071. The second item is our board calendar, and the third being our land trust plans. Is there a motion to start the conversation on item number 7 from the consent agenda, Safe Schools, number 26-071?
So moved.
Can we get a little more?
Second.
Can we get a little more specific about the motion if you're motioning to approve or not approve the recommendation?
Oh, sorry, I thought you were asking us to move it to
We've already
action.
moved it
Okay,
from
sorry.
consent. Would you like to withdraw the original motion?
I withdraw.
Thank you. Would you like to restate a motion?
No.
Okay. Parliamentarian, Ms. Kindle.
So, since the motion was seconded, she can't withdraw it herself. It now belongs to the entire board, so you need to ask the board, she needs to ask the board if there's any objection to her withdrawing the motion, because now the motion belongs to the entire board.
Is there any objection to me withdrawing that mistaken motion?
None. Seeing none. Thank you, parliamentarian. Is there another motion on the table regarding that Safe Schools case?
I make a motion to approve the safe, let me find the language, sorry. The Safe Schools case number 26-071.
Is there a second to the motion? If there's no second, I believe the motion fails. If I'm correct, parliamentarian, okay. Another call for a second. Okay, seeing none, that motion fails. Is there another motion on the table? All right, parliamentarian, where might we jump off to next if there isn't a motion? It just,
That's fine, it's just not approved, so.
okay. All right, that motion, agenda item is not approved. We'll move on to number 2, board calendar for the year 26-27. Is there a motion on the table?
I move that we accept the 26-27 board calendar dates as posted in Exhibit 3F1.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote, starting with Board Member Williams.
Bryce Williams, yes.
Charlotte Fife Jefferson, yes.
Ashley Anderson, yes.
Nate Salazar, yes.
Annie Romano, yes.
Brian Jensen, yes.
Amanda Lengwa, yes.
All right, that motion passes. Thank you. Our third item is the school land trust plans. Is there a motion?
I make a go ahead.
I move that we approve the school land trust funds reports from 2024 to 2025.
I second.
We've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote with Board Member Fife Jefferson.
Charlotte Fife Jefferson, yes.
Ashley Anderson, yes.
Nate Salazar, yes.
Annie Romano, yes.
Brian Jensen, yes.
Amanda Lengwa, yes.
Bryce Williams, yes.
All right, that motion passes. Thank you, Board. We will now move on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Grant?
Yep, just a quick note here for the Highland High School Jazz Band, which under the direction of Curtis Black, made it to state for the first time in 20 years. So cheers to Jazz Band and as a jazz aficionado, I'm impressed. And they took the JV for the first time, and the JV scored 5th in that. So I love seeing programs like this develop and grow in strength, and congratulations. I know a lot of work went into making that happen. So thank you to Curtis Black, and thank you to the students who were part of that jazz band there at Highland High School.
Thank you. B.A. Kearsley? Any reports tonight?
This is the last week of legislature. That's my report.
All right. All right. We will now move on to board member reports. We'll start on this end of the table. Amanda, if you don't mind starting us off.
Sure. I attended the Salt Lake City Transportation Advisory Board yesterday. They were discussing the Temple Road closure for their, the downtown Temple Road closure for their open house March 27th through October of 2027. I believe it was stated that Ashley and I don't remember who else were going to work with the church around that. And a thought would be, I'm sure there are going to be a lot of logistical challenges, but maybe a compromise with the church may be open to, hopefully, would be trying to do lighter shuttling. I guess they're talking about finite number of tickets. They know how they're going to handle the flow of traffic and just people in and out of the grounds as much as possible. But if they can decrease the shuttle amounts of shuttling they're doing during our prime transportation times for start of school and end of school, that might be a way to work with them through that time that's impacting our students and families as they're going back and forth from school and our transportation department and stuff. Additionally, they started, I don't know if they just started, but they were talking about the 2034 Olympics as well. And that's going to be another thing that's going to hit us pretty hard, probably significantly more so than the Temple Open House. So so it was interesting to hear that, and and then the CT Open House was moved to tomorrow. So round 2 on FYI if people want to attend.
Thank you for mentioning.
Yes, you're welcome. And Alan stole my little like celebration of the last day of the legislative session Friday, and then hopefully the governor will veto as many as possible. And that's it.
Bryce?
Yeah, a couple of things. I was also going to mention the legislative session ending on Friday. Just wanted to extend a thanks to all board members and cabinet members who have participated in the JLC meetings. I really appreciate you all being there throughout that. While not in my precinct, I got the opportunity to attend Emerson's Stemerson night last week with board member Romano. It was really cool to see all of the community partners and experiences that were brought into the school for that evening. I think that's one of the highlights of this academic year for me, was attending that. It was fantastic. I wanted to commend both the boys and girls basketball teams from West High School. I got to attend the state championship game last week, and although it didn't end the way that we wanted it to, I'm still very proud of those ladies for the work that they've put in this year. And then I also wanted to just remind folks that the
3 hours. Okay, that's just our 3
yeah,
hours.
yeah, I figured as much. I also wanted to remind board members, the superintendent and business administrator Kersley, that the USBA regional meeting is scheduled for next Wednesday, March 11th from 6 to 8 at the USBA office. I mentioned in my board member report 2 weeks ago that I'm not able to attend that particular night, so I am planning to attend the next night up in Ogden. I would love if we could have 100% attendance from those of us sitting here at the table.
Thank you, Bryce. Ashley?
I gotta find a makeup meeting now. I can't go to ours either. I want to congratulate all of our winter sports that are wrapping up, the teams that made playoffs or that had students who found themselves on podiums. That includes West girls and boys basketball, wrestling, and swimming, among other sports, I'm sure. But I specifically want to recognize the 8 West High students who were awarded UHSAA Winter Academic All-State Honors based on their athletic achievements, but also their GPA and cumulative ACT and SAT scores. And they are, I hope I pronounced their names correctly, Abraham Toronto, Claire Beck, Ivy Dimmick, Jason Guo, Oliver Lynn, Robert Rasner, Sienna Ripperton, and Andre Tavtigan. I also understand there are a number of victories that were at the Intermountain Healthcare Academy, where West High students received scholarships, and DECA's state event, where students were very successful. I'm looking forward to art night season at our elementary schools, which will kick off any time now, and I appreciate the work of the parent-teacher organizations who are running all the book fairs that I've been enjoying, where I'm spending all of my money. It's also the last call if you want to visit the Springville High School Art Show, which has art from students at Highland and West. It will wrap up at the end of this month, but it is the start of the IB Art Showcase, which is at the Marmalade Library, if you would like to check that out. I never name all the student achievements in Precinct 3 because there are just too many amazing students and teachers, so please always feel free to tell me if there's something I missed. I do want to take the rest of my time to respond a little bit to the concerns raised in the public comment period by some West High community members. I've expressed concerns that the district leadership's willingness to operate elementary schools under capacity has caused some difficulty for our elementary schools that are absorbing these large cuts we heard about tonight. As I shared in our last board meeting, and as the public commenter alluded, West is being asked to do the equivalent of closing a small elementary school without any kind of study or support, and that's a really difficult undertaking. But at the same time, I want to balance that conversation by responding to my understanding of why West is seeing a larger percentage of staffing cuts than other high schools. The current year's projections left West High overstaffed by 6 FTE. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
I told you 6, but
5 FTE. So some FTE were overstaffed in the projections because they were inaccurate. And rather than take those 5 FTE on October 1st of this year, as many of our neighboring districts would do, district leadership did permit West to retain those additional FTE despite not having the population to fund that quantity of staff members, using the limited funding we have available from the minimum school program and supplemented by tax levies. One reason that West's cuts appear larger to the community is in part because district leadership did choose to support West in retaining those positions all year rather than reducing them, which again would have happened in most other neighboring districts. And so I understand as a representative for West that math tends to be equal but unpopular. And the legislature's funding combined with property tax allows us to fund a ratio of students to adults, but so many factors do impact the human costs of that ratio. So I want to encourage our leadership to reflect on that situation, the presence that we had from West tonight, and encourage if we can offer some support to help West step down their staffing based on that error rather than go off of the staffing cliff. I say that because it was not the fault of the school's leadership that the projections were inaccurate. Projections are sometimes inaccurate. But the school leadership, faculty, families ultimately bear the cost of these unpopular reductions. And if we can support ways to incrementally step secondary schools into appropriate staffing levels, that would help us while also offering logistic support and assisting secondary administrators in identifying staffing models that work better in schools with declining enrollment, so we can work to limit programs rather than eliminate programs. And it would support all of the students as they navigate what started with a projection error. I think it would also behoove our board to remember our decisions about elementary schools do impact our secondary programs for thousands of students, but also that it is something we could consider to revise the ratio and admit that our schools, as with declining enrollment, need to be funded at a different ratio unless we do want to see the elimination of languages, of specialty programs, and of things that our community really appreciates and values, that if we lose will only contribute to our decline. So we're in kind of a very complicated situation. I want to acknowledge that. I do want to say I appreciate board members following up on a TIF policy recommended by Representative Ward that would have been positive for TIF transparency. It continues to languish in rules, so it is effectively dead. But I think with the board agreement that TIF is a priority, perhaps our ad hoc committee can work in the interim on that topic and continue to share advocacy ideas for the coming year. I'm also concerned about a tremendous amount of last minute legislation, but HB 315 is at the top of my list as a former member of our Human Sexuality Committee. If HB 315 by Representative Peck passes, it would require our district to show an medically inaccurate and misleading video about human development. This bypasses the existing statute for human sexuality where a committee of board members, parents, teachers, and administrators work together to come up with the best decisions meeting all of these state criteria. If you are concerned by HB 315 and showing medically inaccurate videos to students, I would consider you reach out to the Senate Judiciary tomorrow, who is hearing this in a kind of an outside of education committee. Senator Weiler, who is some of our representatives, he is chairing that committee. If you'd like to reach out to Senator Weiler and let him and other committee members know that HB 315 bypasses the important committee work we do that makes a big difference and allows parent input, which is appropriate. That's it.
Thank you, Ashley. Voss?
I'd like to second that recognition of some of the statements that were made earlier, specifically relating to staff policies. In specific, I would like to highlight the accomplishments of West High students, many of whom are my peers in the IB program, which is existent based on some of our staffing. We have 8 of our 11, which is the first time for the Sterling Scholar competition. We have 8 of our 11 nominees going to the finals on the 10th. This is the first time in West High history that we've had all students, all 11 of our nominees, be accepted to the semifinals. And we have 3 students from Highland also going to the finals, as well as 2 from East, which is fantastic. We also have 12 National Merit finalists that I'd like to announce, and we have scholarships going to 10 students who were involved with our Intermountain Healthcare Academy recently. We also have, although I don't know whether this was acknowledged while I was gone last time we met, 6 of the 23 participants who were at the state DECA conference from West High School were awarded first place and qualified for the DECA International Conference next month in Atlanta. And the Science Olympiad also competed at Snow College recently, resulting in a first place finish in the middle school division and a second place finish for the high school division. So congratulations to all those groups.
Thank you, Voss. Brad?
Well, I've had the opportunity to participate in another career fair. It was a wonderful experience at East High. I think Board Member Romano, you were there as well. I know that we have referenced High School Musical in the past, but okay, it occurred last week, and it was really a lot of fun to see the community engagement in that musical. I mean, I think it's kind of remarkable for a high school auditorium to sell out, and I think they did it a couple of times.
Like 4
What,
nights.
4 times?
Yeah.
Okay. The other thing that I want to acknowledge there is the work that goes into something like that, not just the school. I mean, the director, he's done this, I think this is his second time of doing High School Musical. I think he did it at the 10th anniversary. I want to thank the director, Kevin McClellan, for doing that. I also want to thank members of High School Musical that came and supported it. I thought that it was remarkable that those actors would come and that they would spend time engaging with the students. And at one of those performances that I was at, I waded through a big long line to speak to Coach Bolton because I wanted to thank him for, I mean, it was incredible. You know, will you hold my baby? Will you? It was amazing.
Did you get a signature?
I did get a signature on the original High School Musical floor, basketball court floor. Yeah, so I have a real memento. But anyway, I think that those are the sorts of things that really create excitement and enthusiasm. And I think sometimes it's really, you know how on, you know, national news, they'll have like their last news story, the positive things. What a positive thing. The career fair, what a positive thing. I want to thank the East High PTA for all that they did with that and for all that they're doing with lots of other things. And it's the same with Highland High's PTA and their SCCs. I was at East High's SEC meeting, and our parents work really hard, and thank you. I also want to say that I will, one more thing that I think is exciting, and I appreciate the district administration working on this and the school administration at East, that they were able to figure out that soccer team and make that a viable opportunity for those freshmen. I mean, don't you think there were probably 10 that spoke to us at that meeting? And I think it's important for them to recognize that they are heard and that people work to respond to their concerns. I'm going to try and attend the USBA policy webinar tomorrow at 11 a.m. That's mine.
Thank you, Brian. Annie?
Yeah. We're all in this together, and go team. To my children's dismay, we all went together as a family, and I was dressed in leopard pants and a red shirt, and a OG High School Musical fan. And told the story many times about how I refused Zac Efron's invitation to be in the movie. Anyway, it was super fun. The cast and crew and everyone did hard work, and like you said, the PTA, it was great. They had a dance party afterwards, and I met people who would come in from out of state to attend the musical and take pictures all around the school and do the tour and everything.
Someone came from Europe.
Yep. People came from all over. So that was awesome. Thank you, East, for doing that. It was such a fun, inclusive event. The cast included people from all backgrounds and abilities, and it was so fun to watch. Thank you, West students, for having your voices heard, and also the East students from the who wanted the soccer team. I heard many West High people reach out about the ASL program, and that was able to be resolved. I know Ashley mentioned there are some really tricky balancing act of school funding and correct ratios, and I think we're all trying to work together to make that happen. As a parent of a student with hearing loss and with many people that I love in the deaf community, I think it's really important to have those types of programs to ensure that that population is included and served appropriately. I also was able to go to Stemerson, as Bryce mentioned. That was also fun for my kids and the school administrators and PTO and all of the organizations who came and contributed. It's a really great event, and they're doing a lot of fun things at Emerson. Thanks to this to SLEF for doing National Reading Day yesterday at Rose Park, and for all of their efforts to try to recognize the teachers and the good things happening in the district. I was also able to go to East Career Day and bore many students to death in my presentation. But it was fun, and grateful to see all of the good work that's happening across the district. Oh, I will be attending the Clayton Musical and Clayton SEC, and planning on going to the CTE open house. And I have a meeting upcoming with some SLCSD teachers, and I will be part of board agenda setting and transportation meetings in the future as well. Thanks.
I had an opportunity to visit with an admin assistant principal at Edison Elementary. I went for an SCC meeting, but it was canceled, so I ended up just speaking with admin and also the school counselor there. And as I was there, I witnessed how welcoming and loving they are with their families and their students. And I also saw and heard that there's so many social needs, and families are really struggling with even having adequate amount of food or like diapers and things to take care of their families. So, and some of their grants have run out. And with illnesses, they're trying to address attendance. And if someone's a little bit sick, but they're not sure if they should go home, they were saying that it would really be great to have full-time nurses. So I know we're talking about academic intervention, but there's also a lot of other needs that we need to be mindful of. And also family support specialists. Those are direly needed in our Title I schools. So I just wanted to mention that. I am planning to go to the Magnet Gifted and Talented Open House on March 24th at Edison. And I understand that they're having a 6th grade next year. 6th grade, or proposing to have a 6th grade ELP class, or Magnet Gifted class, so that those students won't have to go to transfer out of their school, right? They can stay in the program. Anyway, but I wanted to find out more about that, and but I encourage any other board members to attend if they want to find come to the Magnet Gifted and Talented Open House on March 24th. I have to figure out the time. I'll let you know the time. I will be out of town on March 11th, right? Is that when the meeting is? The JLC, our regional meeting. So I can't attend, and there's also a college and career day at Edison that I'm missing. So, but our own representative, Sandra Hollins, will be giving the keynote address there. So, all right, that's about it.
Thank you, Charlotte. I just have a few quick updates, and they're just, most of them are reiterations from what I said at the beginning. Please know, community, that our meeting for the next meeting that we're having is not on a Tuesday, it's on Wednesday. It'll be March 18th instead of the 17th, again, so that everybody can go attend caucus night within your respective parties. The next thing along with that is just an announcement to the board about what we decided regarding feedback with the special education job reclassification. If you could let Brian and me know your thoughts about moving that to consent or having another discussion on the discussion agenda by the 9th, by next Monday, that would be much appreciated. The other piece, and Ashley, I'm really glad that you brought up TIF and the ad hoc committee. It's come to Brian's and mine's attention that Charlotte stepped away from that ad hoc committee, and we would like to find another board member to join you and learn from you and Alan about all the upcoming future TIFs and other acronyms that are in the works right now
Ready?
regarding.
Sign me up.
Okay, so if there is another board member that's interested in that, if you could let Brian and me know, that would also be very much appreciated as well. The next thing is we will have another public comment on the 18th for the student fee schedule, again, a time certain at 7:15. And then lastly, we do have a need for to re-enter our closed session. You do have a proposed motion in front of you, but if you could add that we will adjourn at the end of the meeting, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
I can make that
And
motion.
there's a CTE open house tomorrow as well.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I move that the board re-enter closed session to discuss the character, professional competence, or physical or mental health of an individual and pending or reasonably imminent litigation, and that we adjourn immediately following the closed session.
Second.
Motion and a second. Thank you, board. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote starting with board member Anderson.
Ashley Anderson, yes.
St. Salazar, yes.
Yanni Romano, yes.
Oh, Brian Jensen, yes.
Anna Longo, yes.
Bryce Williams, yes.
Charlotte Fife Jefferson, yes.
That motion passes. Thank you, and thank you for joining us this evening.